Welcome, weary traveler, to a quiet corner of time where the whispers of history can lull you into a peaceful slumber. Tonight, we embark on a journey not through the bustling present, but into the hushed echoes of a distant past. Find your most comfortable spot, let your body sink into its embrace, and allow your mind to drift. The world outside, with its demands and its clamor, can wait. Here, in this space we create together, there is only the gentle rhythm of narrative, a soft current to carry you away. Imagine, if you will, a world not so different from our own, yet profoundly distinct. A world where the sun, that constant golden orb, decided to dim its light, not for a moment, but for years. A world where the very air grew heavy with an unseasonable chill, and the familiar cycle of seasons faltered. This is not a tale of terror, but of quiet endurance, of humanity's gentle struggle against an unforeseen darkness. It is a story designed to soothe, to calm, to guide you towards the tranquil shores of sleep, while offering a glimpse into a time that tested the very fabric of existence. Our destination is the year 536 CE, a year that historians in their quiet contemplation of ancient records have come to label as perhaps the worst year to be alive in human history. A bold claim, perhaps, given the countless epochs of strife and suffering that have marked our species' journey, yet the evidence, when examined with a calm and steady gaze, paints a picture of profound, widespread disruption, a global shadow that fell across continents, altering lives in ways both subtle and catastrophic. But fear not, for our exploration will be gentle, our narrative a comforting presence, guiding you through the twilight of that distant age. This was a time when the Byzantine Empire, a continuation of the mighty Roman legacy, stretched its influence across vast swathes of land from the sun-drenched shores of the Mediterranean to the fertile plains of Anatolia. Emperor Justinian, a figure of immense ambition and tireless energy, sat upon the throne in Constantinople, dreaming of restoring the glory of Rome. His armies marched, his laws were codified, and grand cathedrals like the magnificent Hagia Sophia rose towards the heavens, testaments to human ingenuity and faith. Yet, even the most powerful empire, the most ambitious emperor, was utterly vulnerable to the whims of the natural world, and it was the natural world that delivered the first, most unsettling blow. Not a thunderous earthquake, nor a raging flood, but something far more insidious, a gradual fading of the light. It began, for many, as a simple, prolonged twilight, a morning that refused to fully awaken. The sun, when it appeared at all, was a pale, ghostly disk, its warmth diminished, its golden hue replaced by an unsettling ethereal blue. This was no ordinary cloud cover, no passing storm. This was a persistent, pervasive veil, a mysterious fog that rolled across Europe, the Middle East, and parts of Asia, obscuring the sun for a year and a half, and in some regions even longer. Imagine the quiet confusion, the slow dawning of unease as days bled into weeks, and the familiar world began to subtly, yet irrevocably, change. This phenomenon, now understood by modern science to be the result of massive volcanic eruptions, likely in Iceland or North America, ejected vast quantities of ash and aerosols into the atmosphere. These microscopic particles, carried by global wind currents, formed a stratospheric veil, scattering sunlight and reducing its intensity. The consequences were immediate and profound. Global temperatures plummeted, leading to widespread crop failures, famine, and disease. It was a silent catastrophe, unfolding with a slow, relentless inevitability, touching every aspect of life, from the grand imperial courts to the humblest peasant villages. And it is into one such village and the quiet lives of its inhabitants that we shall now gently step. As we delve deeper into this historical moment, remember that our purpose is not to dwell on hardship, but to observe, with a calm and detached curiosity how life unfolded under such extraordinary circumstances. We will explore the subtle shifts in daily routines, the quiet anxieties that permeated the air, and the remarkable resilience of the human spirit. Allow the details to wash over you, like the gentle lapping of waves on a distant shore. Let the narrative be a soft hand, guiding you towards a state of profound relaxation, where the echoes of the past merge seamlessly with the tranquility of the present moment. The journey has just begun, and with each passing word, you may find yourself drifting further, deeper, into a peaceful and restorative sleep. The year 536 CE, a seemingly innocuous point in the vast tapestry of human history, holds a unique and somber distinction. It was a year that witnessed a profound and pervasive disruption, a period of global dimming and cooling that cast a long shadow over continents. For those living through it, the experience was one of bewildering uncertainty, a gradual unraveling of the familiar rhythms of life. The sun, the very source of life and warmth, seemed to betray them, its light muted, its heat withdrawn. This was not a sudden cataclysmic event that announced itself with thunder and fire, but a slow, insidious change, a creeping twilight that settled over the land, transforming the world in subtle yet devastating ways. Modern historical and scientific inquiry has pieced together the puzzle of 536 CE, revealing a story of interconnected global phenomena. The primary culprit, as best as can be determined, was a series of massive volcanic eruptions. While the exact locations remain a subject of ongoing research, evidence points to significant events in places like Iceland and possibly North America. These eruptions, far more powerful than typical volcanic activity, spewed immense quantities of volcanic ash, sulfur dioxide, and other aerosols high into the Earth's stratosphere. Unlike tropospheric aerosols, which are quickly washed out by rain, stratospheric aerosols can persist for years, forming a vast reflective veil that encircles the globe. This stratospheric veil acted as a colossal sunshade, scattering incoming solar radiation back into space. The result was a dramatic reduction in the amount of sunlight reaching the Earth's surface, leading to a phenomenon known as a volcanic winter. The term, while evocative, only hints at the profound and far-reaching consequences of such an event. The dimming of the sun was not merely a visual curiosity, it was a direct assault on the very foundations of life on Earth. The immediate and most tangible effect was a sharp drop in global temperatures. Historical records from various cultures, from the Byzantine Empire to China, speak of unseasonable cold, summer frost, and even snowfall in regions where it was previously unheard of. This climatic shift, occurring with a rapidity that defied all known patterns, had a catastrophic impact on agriculture. Crops, dependent on a delicate balance of sunlight, warmth, and predictable seasons, failed on a massive scale. The staple grains that formed the backbone of ancient economies, wheat, barley, rice, withered in the fields, their growth stunted by the lack of light and warmth. The result was a cascade of consequences, a domino effect that rippled through societies, leading to widespread famine, social unrest, and a demographic decline that would be felt for generations. But beyond the stark realities of famine and cold, the year 536 CE also represents a profound psychological event. Imagine a world where the sun, a symbol of life, hope, and divine order, becomes a source of fear and uncertainty. Imagine a sky that no longer offers the familiar comfort of a golden dawn or a fiery sunset, but instead a persistent, eerie twilight. The psychological toll of such an experience is difficult to overstate. It would have been a time of deep spiritual crisis, a period when people questioned their place in the cosmos, their relationship with their gods, and the very stability of the world they inhabited. It is this combination of physical hardship and existential dread that makes 536 CE such a compelling and somber chapter in human history, a year when the world as they knew it seemed to be slowly, inexorably fading away. Before the twilight descended, life in the Byzantine Empire, for the vast majority of its inhabitants, was a tapestry woven with the threads of ancient traditions, agricultural cycles, and the quiet rhythms of daily existence. It was a world where the rising and setting of the sun dictated the pace of life, where the changing seasons brought with them a familiar sequence of tasks and celebrations, and where the bonds of family and community formed the bedrock of society. Let us gently immerse ourselves in this world to understand the life that was so profoundly disrupted by the events of 536 CE. In the rural heartlands of the empire, in the countless villages that dotted the landscapes of Anatolia, the Balkans, and the Levant, life was intimately tied to the land. Imagine a small, sun-drenched village nestled in a fertile valley, surrounded by fields of wheat and barley that shimmered like gold in the afternoon sun. The houses, built of mud brick and timber, with thatched roofs that smelled of dried grasses and herbs, clustered together around a central well, the social heart of the community. Here, news was exchanged, stories were told, and the daily dramas of village life unfolded. For a family of farmers, the day would begin before dawn with the crowing of the rooster and the first faint hints of light in the eastern sky. The air would be cool and fresh, carrying the scent of damp earth and blooming wildflowers. The father, his hands calloused from years of labor, would lead the oxen out to the fields, their heavy, rhythmic tread a familiar sound in the quiet morning. The mother, her movements efficient and practiced, would tend to the household, grinding grain for the day's bread, milking the goat, and preparing a simple meal of porridge and cheese. Children from a young age had their own roles to play, their small hands helping with the endless tasks of rural life, feeding the chickens, collecting eggs, fetching water from the well, and scaring birds away from the precious crops. Life was not easy, by any means. It was a life of hard physical labor, of vulnerability to the whims of weather and the demands of landlords and tax collectors. Yet, it was also a life of deep connection to the natural world, a life of simple pleasures and profound moments of beauty. The taste of freshly baked bread, the warmth of the sun on one's skin, the sound of laughter echoing through the fields at harvest time, these were the things that sustained the human spirit, that gave meaning and purpose to the daily struggle. In the bustling cities of the empire, life was a different, though no less intricate, dance. In Constantinople, the magnificent capital, the air hummed with the energy of 1,000 different lives, 1,000 different stories. The streets, paved with stone and lined with multi-story buildings, were a vibrant, chaotic mix of sights, sounds, and smells. Merchants from distant lands displayed their wares in crowded marketplaces, their voices a cacophony of different languages. Artisans, in their small, open-fronted workshops, practiced ancient crafts, their skilled hands transforming wood, metal, and clay into objects of beauty and utility. The aroma of exotic spices mingled with the scent of baking bread, the tang of the sea, and the ever-present smell of wood smoke and humanity. Here, in the heart of the empire, one could find both unimaginable wealth and desperate poverty, living side by side in a complex and often precarious balance. The grand palaces of the aristocracy, with their marble columns, mosaic floors, and lush walled gardens, stood in stark contrast to the crowded, unsanitary tenements where the urban poor lived out their lives. Yet, even in this world of stark inequalities, there was a sense of shared identity, a collective pride in being part of the greatest city on earth. The magnificent Hagia Sophia, with its soaring dome that seemed to float above the city, was a symbol of the shared faith in imperial power, a place where people from all walks of life could come together to marvel at the glory of God and the genius of human creation. Life in the city was governed by a different set of rhythms than in the countryside. The day was marked not by the rising and setting of the sun, but by the ringing of church bells, the calls to prayer, and the bustling activity of the marketplaces. For the urban dweller, life was a constant negotiation a series of interactions with a diverse and ever-changing cast of characters. It was a life of greater opportunity, but also of greater risk, a life where fortunes could be made and lost in the blink of an eye. This, then, was the world on the eve of 536 CE, a world of quiet rural villages and bustling, vibrant cities, a world of deep faith and ancient traditions, a world where life, for all its hardships, was underpinned by a sense of order, a belief in the predictable cycles of nature and the enduring power of human institutions. It was a world that was about to be plunged into a long, slow twilight, a world that would be tested in ways that no one could have possibly imagined. And it is into this world, with its quiet rhythms and its unsuspecting inhabitants, that we will now gently and with a calm and steady heart proceed. Imagine, if you will, the quiet stirrings of a new day in a small Byzantine village, much like the one we just envisioned. The first light of dawn, usually a soft golden promise filtering through the wooden shutters of your humble home, would typically bring with it the familiar sounds of awakening, the distant crow of a rooster, the gentle rustle of straw as your family began to stir, the faint crackle of the fire being rekindled in the hearth. But on this particular morning, the morning of 536 CE, something was profoundly, unsettlingly different. You lie on your straw mattress, a simple sack filled with dried plants from the previous autumn, far removed from the cushioned comforts of modern sleep. It rustles beneath you with every slight movement, a constant, gentle reminder of your connection to the earth. The familiar pokes and prods of stray stalks are almost comforting in their regularity. You open your eyes, expecting the usual soft glow that precedes the full light of day, but instead, a strange, muted luminescence pervades the room. It is not the deep black of night, nor the vibrant gold of dawn. It is a twilight, an eerie, almost ethereal blue, as if the world itself is holding its breath. The rooster, ever punctual, has already crowed its call, echoing through the unusual stillness. Yet, the light has not followed its summons. A quiet confusion begins to settle in. Perhaps it is merely a particularly heavy cloud cover, a storm brewing on the horizon. You have seen storms before, of course, their dark bellies swallowing the sun for a time, but this feels different. There is no rumble of distant thunder, no whisper of wind through the eaves, only this pervasive, unsettling dimness. Your father, a man whose life is inextricably linked to the sun and the soil, is already by the door, his broad back silhouetted against the strange light. He is peering outside, his posture one of quiet bewilderment, a furrow in his brow that speaks volumes. Your mother, ever practical, is stoking the small fire in the center of the room, the smoke curling upwards through the hole in the thatched roof, its usual dance with the morning light now strangely subdued. "What is it?" your mother asks, her voice a soft murmur, noticing your father's unusual stillness. He shakes his head slowly, a gesture of profound uncertainty. "Come look," he says, his voice low, almost a whisper. You follow him outside, your bare feet cool against the packed earth, and that is when you see it, truly see it, with your own eyes. The sky is wrong. It is morning by all accounts, the time when the world should be waking, vibrant and alive, but it looks like late dusk, or perhaps the earliest, most hesitant moments before dawn. And the sun, that familiar life-giving orb, is not yellow, not orange, not even a pale white. It is blue, a dim, ghostly blue, like a full moon hanging in the daytime sky, rather than the powerful, radiant sun you have always known. Its light is so weak, so diffused, that it barely illuminates the world around you. "Is it an eclipse?" you ask, your young voice barely audible in the strange quiet. Your father shakes his head again, his gaze fixed on the unsettling blue disk. "Eclipses don't last this long," he murmurs, "and the sun wouldn't be blue. His words carry a weight of unfamiliarity, a hint of fear that you have rarely heard from him. Your family is not alone in their quiet vigil. All around the village, doors are creaking open, and figures are emerging from their homes, their faces turned upward, expressions a mixture of awe and terror. No one has ever seen anything like this before. The collective silence of the village, usually broken by the sounds of daily life, is now punctuated only by hushed whispers and the occasional nervous cough. Old Elena, the oldest woman in the village, hobbles forward with her walking stick, her ancient eyes, clouded with age, fixed on the sky. She is at least 60, a remarkable age in these times, a living testament to resilience, having survived famines, wars, and 3 husbands. It's the end times, she announces dramatically, her voice raspy but clear, cutting through the silence. Just like the prophets foretold darkness upon the land, her words, usually received with reverence, are met with a rare defiance from your father. "Oh, shut up, Elena," he says, a bold retort considering the respect she commands. "You said the same thing when that 2-headed calf was born 5 years ago." Elena, undeterred, shoots back, "And have things gotten better since then? Emperor raising taxes, Goths and Vandals causing trouble everywhere, and now this." She gestures with a trembling hand towards the dim blue sun. "Mark my words. You know your father is worried, despite his brave face. His life, like that of most in the village, revolves around the land. Your family are farmers, cultivating barley and vegetables, tending to chickens and a goat. Your very existence is utterly dependent on the weather, on the sun. As a child of about 10, your job is to help with the animals, to collect the few eggs the chickens lay. You've already noticed the chickens are confused. They went back into their coop after coming out briefly, their usual morning routine disrupted. Animals, you realize, can sense when things aren't right. What does it mean? You ask your father, tugging at his rough homespun tunic. "I don't know," he admits, his gaze still on the sky. His admission, more than anything else, scares you. "Your father always knows what to do, but we should get to work anyway," he adds, trying to inject a semblance of normalcy into the unsettling morning. The fields won't plow themselves, but even as he speaks, you can feel it, the cold. It is not the biting cold of winter, but certainly not the gentle warmth you would expect in March, the harbinger of spring. Your breath forms small clouds in the air, visible puffs of vapor in the dim light. It's freezing, your mother says, wrapping her shawl tighter around her shoulders. "How can it be this cold? Yesterday was warm." Your family goes about their morning chores, but everything feels off. The goat is agitated, bleating nervously. The chickens refuse to leave their coop, huddled together in a confused mass. And there is an eerie quiet over the village, a profound absence of the usual sounds of nature. No bird singing, no buzzing of insects. Even the wind seems to hold its breath. By midday, or what should be midday, the light has not improved. If anything, it is dimmer, the blue sun hanging in the sky like a ghost, providing barely enough light to see clearly. And then you notice the strangest part of all. You are not casting a shadow, neither is anyone else. "Look," you say, pointing to the ground. "No shadows." Your father stops his work, his eyes widening as he stares at the earth. It is true. The sun is so weak, so utterly devoid of its usual power, that it casts no shadows at all. In your entire life, you have never seen such a thing. The world, it seems, has truly begun to unravel. The unnatural twilight, with its ghostly blue sun and its profound, shadowless light, did not just disrupt the physical world, it sent ripples of fear and confusion through the very soul of the community. In an age where the line between the natural and the supernatural was porous, where the world was alive with unseen forces and divine portents, such an event could only be interpreted as a sign, a message of profound and terrifying significance. The initial awe quickly gave way to a desperate search for meaning, a scramble to understand the will of the heavens, or the malevolence of some earthly power. In the days that followed the first morning of the dim sun, the village became a crucible of speculation and fear. The familiar routines of life, though attempted, were hollowed out, performed with a sense of foreboding that hung in the air as thick as the mysterious haze itself. Conversations, once filled with the mundane details of daily life, now revolved around a single, all-consuming question: why? The answers, when they came, were as varied and as unsettling as the phenomenon itself. Many, like old Elena, saw the hand of God in the unfolding darkness. It was a punishment, they whispered, for the sins of humanity, for the pride of emperors and the wickedness of men. The dimming of the sun was a divine rebuke, a sign of God's displeasure, a harbinger of the end times foretold in the Holy Scriptures. Priests, their faces etched with a mixture of fear and fervent conviction, led prayers in the small village church, their voices echoing in the unusual stillness, pleading for mercy, for a return of the light. The scent of incense, usually a comforting aroma, now seemed to mingle with the cold, damp air, a fragile offering against an overwhelming sense of cosmic dread. Others, their minds steeped in the ancient folklore and superstitions that had been passed down through generations, looked for explanations closer to home. They spoke of ancient curses, of powerful spirits of the earth and sky that had been angered by some human transgression. They whispered tales of dragons, their fiery breath now a cold, suffocating fog, or of malevolent spirits, their shadowy forms now made manifest in the dimming of the sun. Charms were hung over doorways, protective symbols were drawn in the dirt, and ancient rituals, long dormant, were revived in a desperate attempt to ward off the encroaching darkness. And then there were the whispers of human malice, of mortal men wielding powers beyond the ken of ordinary folk. The Byzantine Empire, for all its power and influence, was a realm of intrigue and conflict, its borders constantly threatened by rival powers, its internal politics a complex web of alliances and betrayals. It was easy, in this atmosphere of fear and uncertainty, to see the hand of an enemy in the unfolding catastrophe. Some spoke of Persian mages, their dark arts capable of casting spells that could dim the very sun, a magical assault on the heart of the empire. Others whispered of the Goths and the Vandals, their barbarian gods now ascendant, their power growing as the light of the Christian world faded. These theories, born of fear and desperation, spread through the village like a contagion, fueling the growing sense of panic and unease. Every unusual occurrence, every strange sound was now seen as a portent, a confirmation of one's deepest fears. The birth of a deformed animal, the sudden death of a seemingly healthy person, the strange behavior of the birds and the beasts, all were woven into the tapestry of superstition and dread that was now enveloping the community. The headman of the village, a man of practical and sober disposition, tried to maintain a semblance of order to quell the rising tide of panic. He urged people to be rational, to focus on the practical challenges of survival, to not give in to fear and superstition. But his words, once respected and heeded, now seemed to carry less weight. In a world that had become so profoundly irrational, so utterly divorced from the familiar patterns of nature, reason itself seemed a fragile and inadequate tool. And so the village waited, trapped in a state of suspended animation, their eyes constantly scanning the sky, searching for any sign of change, any hint of a return to normalcy. But the days bled into weeks, and the unnatural twilight persisted, a constant, oppressive presence that seeped into every corner of their lives, every thought, every dream. The initial shock and awe had now given way to a gnawing, persistent anxiety, a slow-burning fear that this was not a temporary anomaly, but a new and terrifying reality. The world, it seemed, was not just passing through a shadow, it was becoming a shadow, and the people of the village, along with the rest of humanity, were trapped within it, their lives now governed by the whispers in the gloom and the silent, unblinking gaze of a cold blue sun. The most immediate and tangible consequence of the dimming sun and the unseasonable cold was the silent, creeping paralysis that gripped the agricultural world. For a society so intimately tied to the land, so utterly dependent on the predictable cycles of planting and harvesting, the failure of the crops was not just an economic setback, it was an existential threat, a direct assault on the very foundations of life. In the fields surrounding your village, the vibrant green shoots of barley and wheat, which should have been reaching eagerly towards the spring sun, now stood stunted and pale. They seemed frozen in time, their growth arrested by the persistent chill and the lack of life-giving light. The rich, dark earth, usually teeming with the promise of a bountiful harvest, now lay cold and dormant, its fertility suppressed by the unnatural twilight. The familiar, hopeful sight of a field of young crops, a testament to the farmer's labor and the promise of sustenance, was replaced by a scene of quiet, heartbreaking stagnation. Imagine your father, a man whose hands have known the feel of the soil since he was a boy, walking through his fields in the dim blue light. He crumbles a clod of earth between his fingers, its usual warmth now replaced by a damp, lifeless chill. He examines the young plants, his brow furrowed with a deep, gnawing anxiety. He sees the telltale signs of distress, the yellowing leaves, the wilting stems, the complete absence of the vigorous growth that should be evident at this time of year. He knows with a certainty that sinks like a stone in his gut that if the sun does not return, if the warmth does not come back, these fields will yield nothing but dust and disappointment. The impact was not limited to the grain fields. In the small vegetable gardens that every family tended with care, the scene was equally bleak. The tender seedlings of beans, lentils, and greens, which should have been thriving in the spring warmth, now struggled to survive. Many had already succumbed to the nightly frosts, their delicate leaves blackened and shriveled. The fruit trees, which should have been bursting with blossoms, their branches a riot of pink and white, now stood bare and skeletal, their buds tightly closed against the persistent cold. The promise of a summer harvest of sweet, juicy fruits now seemed a distant, almost impossible dream. The animal world, too, was profoundly affected by the changing conditions. The chickens, confused by the lack of a clear distinction between day and night, laid fewer eggs, their usual prolific output dwindling to a precious few. The goat, its diet dependent on the fresh grasses and herbs that should have been abundant, grew thin and listless, its milk supply diminishing with each passing day. The bees, which should have been flitting from blossom to blossom, their buzzing a constant, gentle hum in the background of village life, were nowhere to be seen, their vital work of pollination left undone. This silent, creeping agricultural crisis was not just a matter of food shortages, it was a disruption of the very rhythm of life. The farmer's year was a carefully choreographed dance with the seasons, a sequence of tasks and activities that had been honed over generations. The plowing, the sowing, the weeding, the harvesting, each had its appointed time, its place in the grand, cyclical narrative of the agricultural year. Now, that narrative had been thrown into disarray. The fields lay fallow, the tools of the farmer lay idle, and the days, once filled with purposeful labor, were now marked by a sense of helpless, anxious waiting. The economic consequences of this agricultural failure began to ripple through the community with a slow, inexorable force. The small surpluses that farmers relied on to trade for essential goods, salt, iron, tools, pottery, were now non-existent. The intricate web of local commerce, the lifeblood of the rural economy, began to unravel. The weekly market, usually a vibrant hub of activity, a place of social gathering and economic exchange, became a shadow of its former self. The stalls, once overflowing with fresh produce, were now sparsely stocked, the faces of the merchants etched with the same worry and uncertainty that haunted the farmers. And as the days turned into weeks and the unnatural twilight persisted, a new and terrifying realization began to dawn on the people of the village. The grain that they had stored from the previous year's harvest, the precious resource that was meant to see them through the lean months of winter, was now all that stood between them and starvation. Every handful of grain, every loaf of bread, was now imbued with a new and profound significance. The simple act of eating, once a source of pleasure and communion, was now tinged with the bitter taste of fear. The silent, chilling stillness in the fields was a harbinger of a much deeper, more profound silence to come. The silence of hunger, the silence of despair. The world, it seemed, was not just growing darker, it was growing emptier, and the specter of famine, once a distant, abstract threat, was now a very real and present danger, looming over the village like the cold, blue sun itself. In the isolated world of the village, where news traveled slowly and often distorted by rumor, the initial days of the dimming sun were filled with local anxieties. But as the weeks passed and the blue light persisted, a new, more unsettling realization began to dawn. This was not a local affliction. Word began to trickle in, carried by weary travelers and grim-faced soldiers, confirming the villagers' deepest fears. The shadow was spreading, stretching its cold fingers across vast distances. Imagine a lone traveler, perhaps a merchant or a pilgrim, arriving at the village, well, his face etched with fatigue and a profound sense of unease. He speaks of what he has seen on his journey, of other villages shrouded in the same eerie twilight, of fields as barren and cold as their own. His words, initially met with a mixture of disbelief and desperate hope, slowly begin to solidify into a terrifying truth. This was not a localized curse, but a phenomenon of immense, perhaps even global, scale. Most chilling were the reports from Constantinople, the magnificent capital of the Byzantine Empire, a city that for many villagers existed only in tales of unimaginable grandeur. It was a place of soaring domes, bustling markets, and the seat of Emperor Justinian, a ruler whose power seemed boundless. Yet, even in this heart of civilization, the sun had dimmed. Travelers spoke of lanterns being lit in the palaces and public buildings, even at midday, a stark and unsettling image that underscored the severity of the situation. The vibrant golden light that usually bathed the city was replaced by a perpetual, ghostly gloom, forcing its inhabitants to adapt to a new, subdued reality. Emperor Justinian, a man of immense intellect and ambition, was not one to easily succumb to panic. He had dedicated his reign to the restoration of the Roman Empire's former glory, engaging in ambitious military campaigns to reclaim lost territories and undertaking vast building projects that reshaped the urban landscape. Yet, even his formidable will was powerless against the forces of nature. Reports indicated that he had summoned his most learned scholars, his astronomers and theologians, to decipher the meaning of this celestial anomaly. Their theories, ranging from the mundane to the mystical, offered little comfort or practical solution. Some suggested it was ash from a distant, unknown volcano, a fire mountain in the north. Others, more inclined to spiritual interpretations, whispered of divine displeasure, or even the breath of a mythical dragon exhaling a chilling fog across the world. The soldiers, those grim-faced envoys of imperial power, also brought news, though often delivered with a weary resignation. They spoke of the same dim light and unseasonable cold in distant provinces, from the fertile lands of Egypt to the rugged mountains of Italy, where Justinian's armies were locked in a protracted struggle with the Goths. The crops, they confirmed, were failing everywhere. Food prices in Constantinople had skyrocketed, becoming a luxury only the wealthiest could afford. The emperor, in a desperate attempt to avert widespread famine in his capital, had ordered grain ships from Egypt, the traditional breadbasket of the empire. But even this measure, a testament to the empire's logistical might, was a temporary reprieve a fragile hope against an overwhelming tide of scarcity. The news from afar painted a grim picture, a world united not by shared prosperity but by a common pervasive darkness. The realization that there was no escape, no sunnier land to flee to, settled over the villagers with a heavy, oppressive weight. If even the mighty Emperor Justinian, with all his power and resources, was struggling to comprehend and combat this phenomenon, what hope was there for the humble inhabitants of a small, forgotten village? The whispers in the gloom now carried a new, more terrifying resonance. The world as they knew it was truly changing, and the future was shrouded in an impenetrable, blue-tinged uncertainty. The slow, chilling stillness that had first gripped their fields was now revealed to be a global embrace, a silent, relentless tightening of the world's breath. And as the days continued to bleed into weeks, the true implications of this spreading shadow began to manifest in ways that would test the very limits of human endurance. This was not merely a change in the sky, it was a fundamental shift in the very nature of existence, a challenge to every assumption about the stability and predictability of their world. The stage was set for a long, arduous struggle, one that would redefine what it meant to survive in a world without the sun's full embrace. The quiet rhythms of daily life, once so comforting, were now replaced by the anxious beat of uncertainty, a drum that would echo through the coming months and years. As the weeks stretched into months and the blue sun remained a constant, unsettling presence in the sky, the initial shock and confusion in the village began to harden into a grim reality. The unseasonable cold persisted, and the fields, once the promise of life, now stood as stark monuments to the failing harvests. The news from afar had confirmed the global nature of the catastrophe, extinguishing any lingering hope that this was a localized, temporary anomaly. With the external world offering no solace, the villagers were forced to turn inward to their dwindling stores and to the stark, terrifying truth of their vulnerability. The headman, a figure of authority whose wisdom was now tested daily, called another assembly. His voice, usually firm and reassuring, was now tinged with a weariness that reflected the collective despair. The message was clear, stark, and unavoidable: rationing. Every family was to meticulously account for their remaining grain, their dried meats, their preserved vegetables. From this day forward, every meal would be a calculated act of survival, every morsel weighed against the uncertain future. The casual generosity of sharing, once a cornerstone of village life, was replaced by a grim possessiveness, a silent, desperate clinging to what little remained. Imagine the quiet, almost ritualistic act of preparing a meal in your home. Your mother, her face thinner now, her movements slower, would carefully measure out the meager portion of grain. The bread, once a hearty golden loaf, was now a pale, dense disk, stretched with whatever meager additions could be found, perhaps some ground acorns or a handful of dried roots. The taste was bitter, the texture coarse, but no one complained. Hunger, a constant, dull ache in the belly, had replaced the desire for flavor. Every bite was a conscious act of sustenance, a silent prayer for endurance. The children, once boisterous and full of energy, now moved with a subdued quietness, their laughter replaced by the occasional whimper of hunger. You too felt the gnawing emptiness, the constant awareness of your own shrinking body. Your mother, with a selflessness born of profound love, would often claim she wasn't hungry, pushing her small portion towards you and your siblings. You knew, with a child's keen intuition, that she was sacrificing her own meager sustenance for yours, a silent act of devotion that spoke volumes of the desperation that had settled upon the family. The village well, once a lively gathering place for gossip and laughter, became a somber hub of whispered anxieties. People exchanged grim glances, their eyes darting towards their neighbors' homes, mentally calculating their own dwindling supplies against the perceived fortunes of others. Trust, once implicit, began to fray at the edges. Arguments, once rare and quickly resolved, now flared up over trivial matters, fueled by the constant pressure of hunger and fear. A dispute over a turn at the communal grinding stone escalated into blows, a stark illustration of how quickly civility could erode under the relentless pressure of scarcity. News from travelers, though scarce, only served to deepen the despair. The same story echoed from Hispania to Persia. Dim sun, failing crops, widespread hunger. The Byzantine Empire, already stretched thin by Emperor Justinian's ambitious wars of reconquest, found itself utterly unprepared for a crisis of this magnitude. Its vast logistical networks, designed to supply armies and maintain imperial splendor, buckled under the strain of feeding an entire populace facing simultaneous agricultural collapse. The grand visions of a restored Roman Empire now seemed a cruel mockery in a world struggling simply to survive. As the days bled into weeks, the desperation grew. The forest, once a source of supplemental food, was now being scoured daily by desperate parties. The small game, the wild berries, the edible mushrooms, all were quickly depleted. The very act of foraging became a dangerous competition, with villagers venturing further and further into unfamiliar territories, risking encounters with wild animals, or more perilously, with other desperate groups. And the world, once vast and full of possibility, had shrunk to the immediate, terrifying reality of survival, a constant, gnawing struggle against the slow, relentless grip of famine. The once vibrant tapestry of village life was unraveling, thread by thread, leaving behind a stark, desolate landscape of hunger and fear. The quiet rhythms of daily life, once so comforting, were now replaced by the anxious beat of uncertainty, a drum that would echo through the coming months and years, a constant reminder of the shrinking world and the growing desperation within it. With the fields yielding little and the stored grain dwindling, the villagers turned their desperate gaze towards the ancient forests that bordered their lands. These woods, once a source of occasional game and wild edibles, now became the primary, albeit increasingly unreliable, hope for sustenance. The familiar paths, once used for collecting firewood or grazing animals, were now trodden by anxious groups, their eyes scanning the undergrowth for any sign of life, any hint of a hidden bounty. Your father, a man who knew the forest intimately, began to spend more and more time within its shadowed depths. He set traps, a skill usually reserved for the harsh depths of winter when other food sources were scarce. You would often accompany him, your small hands helping to gather fallen branches for the fire, your eyes learning to discern the subtle signs of animal trails, the faint rustle of leaves that might betray a hidden creature. The forest, once a place of quiet wonder, now felt different. The usual symphony of birdsong was muted, replaced by an eerie silence. The rustling of unseen creatures, once a comforting presence, now carried a hint of desperation. At first, the forest offered some meager relief. A few rabbits, caught in your father's snares, provided a rare taste of meat. Your mother, with her keen eye for wild edibles, found patches of early mushrooms, their earthy scent a welcome addition to the bland, stretched bread. Small tart berries, usually ignored until later in the season, were now eagerly gathered, their fleeting sweetness a momentary comfort against the pervasive hunger. But these were fleeting victories, small reprieves in a larger, losing battle. As more and more villagers turned to the forest, its resources began to dwindle with alarming speed. The game, once relatively abundant, became scarce, driven deeper into the woods by the constant human presence, or succumbing to the same lack of forage that plagued the domesticated animals. The wild plants, too, were quickly depleted, their delicate ecosystems unable to sustain the sudden, intense pressure of desperate foragers. The forest, once a generous provider, was now a reluctant, almost exhausted source. One morning, about a month after the darkness began, you awoke to find your father already gone. Your mother explained that he had joined a group of men from the village on a hunting expedition, venturing deeper into the forest than they usually dared. They would be gone for several days, a testament to the increasing difficulty of finding anything substantial. While he was away, your responsibilities grew. You checked the small vegetable garden daily, willing the stunted plants to grow in the cold twilight, your breath forming small clouds in the air as you knelt among the withered leaves. You collected the few eggs the confused chickens still laid, their bewildered clucking a constant reminder of the world's disarray. You helped your mother search the forest edge for anything edible, your eyes scanning the ground with a new, desperate intensity. On the third day after your father left, you were collecting firewood near the edge of the forest, the silence broken only by the snap of twigs beneath your feet. Looking up, you saw a deer, a young doe, watching you cautiously from between the trees. In normal times, this would have been an extraordinary sight, a rare glimpse of a creature that usually stayed deep within the forest, far from human settlements. But these were not normal times. The deer looked thin, its ribs visible even from where you stood, a stark illustration of how the cold and the lack of plant growth were affecting all creatures, wild and domestic alike. You froze, barely daring to breathe, your heart pounding with a mixture of awe and desperate hope. You had no weapon, nothing to capture this potential feast. The deer, sensing your stillness, stared at you for a long moment, its large, dark eyes reflecting the dim blue light of the sky. Then, with a silent, graceful movement, it turned and disappeared into the deeper shadows of the forest, leaving you with only the memory of its gaunt form and the bitter taste of missed opportunity. When you told your mother later, she sighed, a sound heavy with resignation. "The animals are struggling too," she murmured. "Everything is." That night, lying on your straw mattress, you stared up at the thatched roof of your home, the familiar comfort of its structure now tinged with uncertainty. You wondered what would happen next. Would the sun ever return to normal? Would the crops grow again? Or was this the new world, cold, dim, and hungry? The forest, once a place of refuge and occasional bounty, was now a mirror of the world outside, depleted, struggling, and offering less and less hope with each passing day. The quiet rhythms of nature, once so reliable, had been thrown into disarray, and humanity, stripped of its usual comforts, was left to face the silent, fading bounty of a world in decline. As the relentless grip of famine tightened its hold on the village, a new and insidious threat began to emerge, one that preyed upon bodies already weakened by hunger and cold, sickness. Malnutrition, a silent and pervasive enemy, slowly eroded the villagers' strength, making them vulnerable to ailments that, in healthier times, might have been easily overcome. The lack of proper nourishment meant that even a common cold could linger, transforming into a persistent cough or a debilitating fever. The once robust health of the community began to fray, replaced by a pervasive frailty that touched young and old alike. Imagine the subtle changes you would observe in your own family and in your neighbors. Faces grew gaunt, eyes sunken, and the vibrant glow of health was replaced by a pallid, almost translucent quality to the skin. Children, once full of boundless energy, moved with a listless slowness, their play subdued, their laughter rare. The elderly, already vulnerable, found their remaining strength ebbing away with alarming speed. A simple fall could lead to a broken bone that refused to heal. A minor cut could fester into a dangerous infection. The body, deprived of its essential building blocks, began a quiet surrender. Diseases once contained or easily combated now found fertile ground in the weakened population. Dysentery, a common affliction in times of poor sanitation, became rampant, its dehydrating effects particularly deadly for those already struggling with fluid and nutrient loss. Fevers, often accompanied by chills and delirium, swept through homes, leaving behind a trail of exhaustion and further debilitation. The village healer, usually consulted for minor ailments or broken bones, found herself overwhelmed, her traditional remedies proving increasingly ineffective against the systemic weakness that now afflicted almost everyone. The lack of warmth also played a significant role in the spread of illness. The persistent cold, even indoors, meant that people huddled together for warmth, creating ideal conditions for the transmission of respiratory infections. The smoke from indoor fires, while providing some heat, also contributed to poor air quality, further irritating lungs already compromised by cold and malnutrition. The simple act of breathing became a potential pathway for disease. Funerals, once rare and solemn occasions, became more frequent, their quiet processions a grim reminder of the toll the darkness was taking. The communal mourning, usually a source of shared grief and comfort, now carried an undertone of fear, a silent question hanging in the air. Who would be next? The headman, in his daily rounds, would notice the increasing number of empty beds, the quiet homes where families had once thrived. The village, once a vibrant tapestry of life, was slowly being unpicked thread by the relentless forces of hunger, cold, and disease. Even those who managed to avoid overt sickness found their cognitive functions dulled. The constant preoccupation with food, the gnawing hunger, made it difficult to concentrate, to think clearly. Decision-making became harder, and the collective spirit, once resilient, began to show cracks. The future, once a distant horizon, now shrunk to the immediate, terrifying reality of the next meal, the next day. The world, it seemed, was not just growing darker and emptier, it was growing sicker, its inhabitants slowly succumbing to the quiet, insidious surrender of the body, a testament to the profound and far-reaching consequences of a world without the sun's full embrace. As the famine deepened and the hope for a return to normalcy faded with each passing day, a new desperate strategy began to emerge in the villages: migration. The land, once a source of life, had become a barren prison, and the only escape lay on the uncertain roads leading to distant cities or rumored lands where the sun might still shine or where food might still be found. This was not a choice made lightly, but a forced exodus driven by the primal instinct for survival. Imagine the agonizing discussions that would have taken place within families, hushed whispers in the dim light of their homes. The decision to leave the ancestral lands, the only home many had ever known, was fraught with sorrow and fear. To abandon the graves of their ancestors, the fields tilled by generations, the familiar faces of neighbors, it was a tearing of the very fabric of their existence. Yet, the alternative was starvation, a slow, agonizing death in a place that had become hostile. Your family, like many others, faced this impossible choice. Your father, after returning from a fruitless hunting expedition, his face etched with exhaustion and despair, finally uttered the words that had been hanging unspoken in the air: "We might have to go to Constantinople." The mere mention of the capital, a place you had only heard about in stories, a city of unimaginable size and splendor, filled you with a mixture of terror and a desperate, fragile hope. It was a day's journey away, a vast distance for those who had rarely ventured beyond the nearby market town. Constantinople, the Queen of Cities, was a beacon of civilization, a place of high walls, magnificent churches like the Hagia Sophia, and more people than you could possibly imagine. The prospect of real food, not just thin soup and bitter acorn bread, was a powerful lure. The belief, perhaps naive, was that the emperor, with all his power and resources, would surely not let his capital starve, even if the rest of the empire withered. This hope, however faint, became the driving force behind the arduous journey. The preparations for departure were grim. You packed what little you could carry: some worn clothing, your mother's prized bronze cooking pot, a small sack of precious grain, a desperate attempt to sustain yourselves on the road. Your father, in a heartbreaking exchange, traded your family's goat to Nikolaos, the village's largest farmer, for a small, rickety cart. With no horse or ox to pull it, You and your family would become the beasts of burden, pulling your meager possessions towards an uncertain future. The morning of your departure was a somber affair. You took a last, lingering look at the home you had known your entire life. The dimness had not improved. If anything, the haze seemed thicker, the blue sun fainter, a mere ghost in the sky. The fields that should have been green with growing crops were brown and withered, a desolate landscape mirroring the emptiness in your heart. As your family set off down the road towards Constantinople, you joined a growing stream of other desperate people, all heading for the city, their faces a mixture of fear, exhaustion, and a flicker of desperate hope. The roads, once arteries of commerce and communication, were now choked with refugees. Families walked in silence, their eyes fixed on the horizon, their bodies bent under the weight of their few possessions and the immense burden of their uncertainty. The air was thick with the dust raised by countless feet and the quiet desperation of those who had left everything behind. You saw faces etched with hunger, eyes that held the haunted look of those who had witnessed too much suffering. Children, too young to fully comprehend the tragedy unfolding around them, clung to their parents' hands, their small faces pale and drawn. This forced migration was not merely a physical journey, it was a profound psychological one. It was a severance from the familiar, a plunge into the unknown. The sense of community, once so strong in the village, was replaced by a stark individualism, a desperate focus on the survival of one's own family. Every stranger was a potential competitor for scarce resources, every interaction tinged with suspicion. The world, once a place of predictable rhythms, had become a vast, hostile expanse, and the road to Constantinople, though promising a chance at survival, was also a path into an uncertain and dangerous future. You had never known real hunger before, or real fear, but looking at the faces around you, you knew that this journey would teach you both, in ways you could never have imagined. The slow grip of famine had not only emptied the fields, it had emptied the villages, setting humanity adrift on a tide of desperation, seeking refuge in the very heart of an empire struggling to maintain its own fragile existence. The quiet rhythms of daily life, once so comforting, were now replaced by the anxious beat of uncertainty, a drum that would echo through the coming months and years, a constant reminder of the shrinking world and the growing desperation within it. The journey had begun, and with each step, the past receded, replaced by the stark, terrifying reality of the present and the daunting uncertainty of what lay ahead. As the roads filled with desperate families fleeing the barren countryside, the great cities of the Byzantine Empire, particularly Constantinople, became reluctant magnets. These urban centers, once symbols of imperial power and prosperity, now faced a new kind of struggle. While they offered the promise of centralized authority, stored food, and a more organized response to the crisis, they also became cauldrons of escalating tension, their intricate social structures strained to their breaking point by the influx of refugees and the relentless pressure of scarcity. Imagine arriving at the gates of Constantinople, a city whose legendary walls, soaring higher than the tallest trees, had always promised protection and grandeur. But the city that greeted you was not the vibrant, sun-drenched metropolis of tales. It was a city cloaked in the same pervasive blue twilight, its magnificent domes and spires muted, its usual clamor replaced by a more subdued, anxious hum. The air, once filled with the scent of exotic spices and fresh bread, now carried the faint, unsettling odor of wood smoke and desperation. Within the city walls, life was a stark contrast to the quiet despair of the villages. Here, the struggle was more organized, yet no less brutal. Emperor Justinian, faced with the monumental task of feeding a burgeoning population, had indeed ordered the distribution of grain from imperial granaries and the redirection of ships from Egypt. These measures, while crucial, were mere drops in an ocean of need. The sheer volume of people, combined with the global failure of crops, meant that even the vast resources of the empire were stretched thin. The marketplaces, once overflowing with goods from across the known world, now displayed a grim scarcity. Food prices, as the soldiers had reported, had indeed skyrocketed, placing basic sustenance beyond the reach of ordinary citizens. A loaf of bread, once a common commodity, became a luxury, a symbol of desperate privilege. This economic upheaval fueled a burgeoning black market, where unscrupulous individuals hoarded what little food remained, selling it at exorbitant prices to those with enough coin or enough desperation. Crime, a constant undercurrent in any large city, surged. Petty theft escalated to desperate robberies, as hunger drove people to acts they would never have considered in normal times. The Imperial Guard, usually tasked with maintaining order and protecting the emperor, found themselves increasingly stretched, trying to quell riots over food distribution and apprehend those who preyed on the vulnerable. The grand avenues, once bustling with merchants and dignitaries, now saw more patrols, their armor gleaming dully in the dim light, their presence a constant reminder of the city's precarious state. Yet, amidst the desperation, there was also a remarkable display of human ingenuity and adaptation. The city, with its established infrastructure and diverse population, offered avenues for survival that were simply unavailable in the isolated villages. Artisans, unable to find traditional materials, repurposed whatever they could, creating new tools and goods from salvaged scraps. Merchants, their usual trade routes disrupted, found new ways to acquire and distribute necessities, often at great personal risk. The sheer density of people, while a source of tension, also fostered a rapid exchange of information and ideas, leading to innovative, albeit desperate, solutions. Religious institutions, particularly the church, played a crucial role in maintaining social cohesion. Bishops and priests, their voices resonating with a new urgency, preached sermons of endurance, faith, and charity. They organized soup kitchens, distributed what little aid they could gather, and offered spiritual solace to a populace grappling with existential dread. The great churches, like the Hagia Sophia, became not just places of worship, but centers of community, offering refuge and a sense of shared purpose in a world that seemed to be unraveling. The wealthy, though insulated from the immediate pangs of hunger, were not entirely untouched. Their grand feasts became more subdued, their public displays of luxury less ostentatious. Even in the highest echelons of society, there was a growing awareness of the fragility of their world, a quiet understanding that the dimming of the sun affected everyone, regardless of their station. Some, driven by genuine compassion or a desire to maintain social order, contributed to relief efforts, their donations a lifeline for countless desperate souls. Life in the cities under the darkness was a complex tapestry of hardship and resilience, of desperation and adaptation. It was a struggle fought not just against hunger and cold, but against the erosion of social norms, the fraying of trust, and the constant threat of chaos. Yet, the cities, with their inherent capacity for organization and their diverse populations, managed to endure, albeit transformed. They became microcosms of the larger human struggle, demonstrating both the fragility of civilization and the remarkable capacity of humanity to adapt, to innovate, and to find new ways to survive, even when the very sun seemed to have abandoned them. The grand narratives of imperial ambition had given way to the stark, immediate reality of survival, a struggle played out in the dim, anxious light of a world forever changed. The quiet rhythms of daily life, once so comforting, were now replaced by the anxious beat of uncertainty, a drum that would echo through the coming months and years, a constant reminder of the shrinking world and the growing desperation within it. The journey had begun, and with each step the past receded, replaced by the stark, terrifying reality of the present and the daunting uncertainty of what lay ahead. The cities, once beacons of light, now flickered in the gloom, their survival a testament to the enduring, if strained, resilience of the human spirit, adaptation and innovation, ingenuity in the face of adversity. In the face of such unprecedented and prolonged adversity, humanity, with its innate capacity for ingenuity, began to adapt. The dimming of the sun and the pervasive cold forced a reevaluation of long-held practices, sparking a wave of innovation born not of leisure or ambition, but of sheer necessity. This was a period where the human spirit, stripped of its usual comforts, demonstrated a remarkable ability to find solutions, however small, to the monumental challenges it faced. In the agricultural sector, where the impact of the climate shift was most acutely felt, farmers and scholars alike began to experiment with new techniques. The traditional reliance on summer crops, which now withered in the unseasonable chill, prompted a search for more resilient alternatives. There would have been attempts to cultivate cold-hardy grains, perhaps varieties that had been previously considered less desirable due to lower yields, but now offered the only hope of a harvest. Farmers might have experimented with different planting times, trying to outwit the unpredictable frosts, or sought out microclimates within their lands that offered a modicum of protection from the biting cold. Beyond the fields, the struggle for warmth spurred domestic innovations. Homes, once designed to maximize sunlight and airflow, were now re-engineered for insulation. Windows, previously open to the elements, were likely sealed with animal hides or thick cloth, trapping precious heat within. Hearths, once used primarily for cooking, became central to survival, their fires burning almost constantly, fueled by dwindling wood supplies. New methods of fuel conservation would have been devised, from more efficient stove designs to the careful management of every precious ember. The scarcity of food also led to a resurgence of ancient knowledge and the development of new culinary practices. People would have turned to foraging for wild edibles with renewed vigor, identifying plants and roots that could sustain them through the lean times. The art of food preservation, already well established, would have become even more critical, with every scrap of meat and every last vegetable carefully dried, salted, or fermented to extend its shelf life. Recipes would have been adapted, stretched, and reinvented, with ingredients substituted and portions minimized, all in a desperate effort to make what little was available last longer. In the cities, the disruption of traditional trade routes and the scarcity of raw materials forced artisans and craftsmen to become remarkably resourceful. Workshops that once specialized in fine silks or intricate jewelry might have pivoted to producing more essential goods, such as warm clothing from coarser materials or tools for foraging and hunting. The recycling of materials, a practice born of necessity, would have become widespread, with every discarded item viewed as a potential resource. Broken pottery could be ground down and mixed with clay for new construction, worn-out garments repurposed into insulation, and even animal bones transformed into tools or decorative items. Beyond the practical, there was also an adaptation of the human spirit. The pervasive darkness and cold fostered a deeper sense of community in some areas, as people realized that their survival depended on mutual aid and cooperation. Shared labor, communal meals, and the pooling of resources became more common, a testament to the enduring human capacity for empathy and collective action. Storytelling, music, and religious rituals, though perhaps more somber, would have provided crucial emotional and spiritual sustenance, offering a sense of continuity and hope in a world that felt increasingly alien. This period of adaptation and innovation was not without its hardships. Many attempts would have failed, many lives would have been lost in the process of trial and error. Yet, the very act of striving, of seeking solutions in the face of overwhelming odds, speaks volumes about the resilience of the human spirit. It was a time when the familiar comforts of the past were stripped away, forcing humanity to confront its fundamental vulnerabilities, but also revealing its profound capacity for creativity, resourcefulness, and an unwavering will to survive. The quiet rhythms of daily life, once so comforting, were now replaced by the anxious beat of uncertainty, a drum that would echo through the coming months and years, constant reminder of the shrinking world and the growing desperation within it. The journey had begun, and with each step, the past receded, replaced by the stark, terrifying reality of the present and the daunting uncertainty of what lay ahead. The cities, once beacons of light, now flickered in the gloom, their survival a testament to the enduring, if strained, resilience of the human spirit. The ingenuity born of desperation became a quiet, persistent flame, flickering in the pervasive twilight, a testament to humanity's refusal to simply fade away. Community and solidarity, threads of connection in the dark. Amidst the widespread hardship and the individual struggles for survival, a remarkable aspect of human nature often comes to the fore, the capacity for community and solidarity. While the initial shock of the dimming sun and the ensuing famine undoubtedly fostered fear and suspicion, it also, in many instances, strengthened the bonds between people, reminding them that in the face of overwhelming adversity, collective action and mutual support were not just ideals, but necessities for survival. The threads of connection, though strained, often proved to be the strongest in the dark. Imagine the village, now thinned by migration and sickness, yet those who remained found a renewed sense of purpose in their shared predicament. The communal well, though its water might be colder and its surroundings quieter, still served as a gathering point, a place where hushed conversations exchanged not just news, but also comfort. A neighbor, noticing a family struggling more than most, might quietly leave a small portion of their meager rations on their doorstep, a silent act of compassion that spoke louder than any words. The elderly, though physically frail, became repositories of ancient knowledge, their memories of past famines and their traditional remedies offering guidance and a sense of continuity in a world that felt utterly new and terrifying. In the cities, where anonymity could easily breed indifference, the crisis often sparked surprising acts of collective responsibility. Guilds, once focused on their specific trades, might have reorganized to provide aid to their members, pooling resources to ensure that no one was left entirely destitute. Religious institutions, as mentioned, became vital hubs of charity, but beyond organized relief, individual acts of kindness blossomed. A baker with a slightly larger portion of flour might bake an extra loaf for a struggling family. A merchant with access to scarce goods might discreetly share them with those in dire need, bypassing the exploitative black market. These acts of solidarity were not always grand gestures. Often they were small, almost imperceptible moments of connection, a shared glance of understanding, a hand offered to help carry a heavy burden, a quiet word of encouragement. They were the subtle affirmations of shared humanity, reminders that even in the bleakest of times, the capacity for empathy and compassion remained. The shared experience of suffering, while isolating in some ways, also forged a powerful, unspoken bond, a collective understanding that transcended individual differences. Consider the communal labor that would have been necessary to adapt to the new conditions. Perhaps groups of villagers would band together to clear new land for more resilient crops or to build more insulated shelters. In the cities, citizens might have organized themselves into informal watch groups, not just to guard against crime, but to look out for the sick and the vulnerable, ensuring that no one was left to suffer alone in the shadows. The very act of working together, of pooling physical and intellectual resources, would have provided a sense of agency, a feeling that they were not entirely powerless against the overwhelming forces of nature. Even the simple act of sharing stories, of gathering around a flickering fire and recounting tales of the past, or imagining a brighter future, became an act of communal resilience. These narratives, whether of ancient heroes or personal triumphs, served as a vital form of psychological sustenance, reminding people of their shared heritage and their enduring capacity for hope. Laughter, though perhaps rarer and more subdued, when it did erupt, was a powerful affirmation of life, a defiant spark against the encroaching darkness. This period, therefore, was not just a testament to human suffering, but also to human connection. It demonstrated that while external forces could strip away material comforts and disrupt established orders, they could not entirely extinguish the innate human need for community, for belonging, for reaching out to one another in times of need. The threads of solidarity, woven through countless small acts of kindness and cooperation, formed a vital safety net, a quiet, persistent affirmation of life in a world that seemed determined to extinguish it. The quiet rhythms of daily life, once so comforting, were now replaced by the anxious beat of uncertainty, a drum that would echo through the coming months and years, a constant reminder of the shrinking world and the growing desperation within it. The journey had begun, and with each step the past receded, replaced by the stark, terrifying reality of the present and the daunting uncertainty of what lay ahead. The cities, once beacons of light, now flickered in the gloom, their survival a testament to the enduring, if strained, resilience of the human spirit. The ingenuity born of desperation became a quiet, persistent flame, flickering in the pervasive twilight, a testament to humanity's refusal to simply fade away. And within this flickering light, the quiet strength of community shone brightest, a beacon of hope in the deepening gloom. Spirituality and hope, the unseen anchor. In times of profound crisis, when the physical world seems to unravel and the familiar comforts of daily life are stripped away, humanity often turns to the unseen, to the realm of the spiritual. The year 536 CE, with its persistent darkness and widespread suffering, was no exception. For the people of the Byzantine Empire, deeply rooted in their Christian faith, spirituality became a vital anchor, a source of hope and meaning in a world that had become profoundly disorienting. It was in the quiet solace of prayer, the communal rituals of the church, and the unwavering belief in a divine plan that many found the strength to endure. Imagine the small village church, its interior usually bathed in the warm glow of sunlight filtering through narrow windows, now illuminated by the flickering light of oil lamps and beeswax candles. The air, thick with the scent of incense and the murmur of hushed prayers, offered a sanctuary from the pervasive gloom outside. Here, the community gathered, their voices rising, in unison, seeking comfort and understanding from a God who, in their eyes, held ultimate control over the heavens and the earth. The familiar liturgy, the ancient hymns, and the comforting words of the Scriptures provided a sense of continuity, a reminder that even amidst chaos, there was an enduring order, a divine presence that transcended the earthly suffering. Priests, their authority often enhanced by the crisis, became crucial figures of spiritual guidance. They interpreted the signs, offered explanations rooted in theological doctrine, and exhorted their congregations to repentance and unwavering faith. While some might have preached of divine wrath, many would have emphasized God's mercy and the promise of ultimate redemption. The message often was one of endurance, that this trial was a test of faith, a period of purification, and that perseverance would ultimately lead to a return of God's favor and the restoration of the world. Beyond the formal rituals of the church, individual acts of piety and devotion became more pronounced. People would have spent more time in personal prayer, seeking direct communion with the divine. Vows might have been made, pilgrimages undertaken if circumstances allowed, and acts of charity performed, all in an effort to appease a seemingly angered deity or to simply find personal peace amidst the turmoil. The belief in miracles, in divine intervention, would have been a powerful force, sustaining hope when all earthly indicators pointed to despair. In the cities, the great cathedrals, like the Hagia Sophia in Constantinople, became even more significant. Their soaring domes and intricate mosaics, though dimmed by the lack of natural light, still spoke of a transcendent beauty, a heavenly realm beyond the reach of earthly suffering. These grand structures, built to glorify God, now served as powerful symbols of enduring faith, drawing vast crowds seeking solace and a sense of collective strength. The sheer act of gathering in such magnificent spaces, of being part of a vast congregation united in prayer, would have provided a profound sense of belonging and shared purpose. Moreover, the crisis might have led to a reevaluation of worldly priorities. The fleeting nature of material possessions, the fragility of human life, and the unpredictability of the natural world would have become starkly apparent. This could have fostered a deeper focus on spiritual values, on the pursuit of righteousness, and on the preparation for an afterlife. The emphasis on charity and mutual aid, already a cornerstone of Christian teaching, would have gained new urgency as people recognized their interconnectedness and their shared vulnerability. While the suffering was immense, the spiritual dimension of life in 536 CE provided an unseen anchor, a profound source of resilience. It offered a framework for understanding the incomprehensible, a narrative that gave meaning to hardship, and a promise of hope that extended beyond the immediate, tangible realities of famine and cold. The quiet rhythms of daily life, once so comforting, were now replaced by the anxious beat of uncertainty, a drum that would echo through the coming months and years, a constant reminder of the shrinking world and the growing desperation within it. The journey had begun, and with each step, the past receded, replaced by the stark, terrifying reality of the present and the daunting uncertainty of what lay ahead. The cities, once beacons of light, now flickered in the gloom, their survival a testament to the enduring, if strained, resilience of the human spirit. The ingenuity born of desperation became a quiet, persistent flame, flickering in the pervasive twilight, a testament to humanity's refusal to simply fade away. And within this flickering light, the quiet strength of community shone brightest, a beacon of hope in the deepening gloom. The spiritual anchor, unseen yet profoundly felt, provided a steadying force, allowing people to navigate the turbulent waters of a world without its accustomed light, holding on to the belief that even in the deepest darkness, a divine light would eventually prevail. Chapter 4, Global Impact and Long-Term Consequences. The spread of the phenomena in a world united in gloom. While our journey is focused primarily on a small village within the Byzantine Empire, the dimming of the sun in 536 CE was not a localized event. It was a global phenomenon, a vast atmospheric disturbance that cast its shadow across continents, uniting disparate cultures and distant lands in a shared experience of environmental upheaval. The news that trickled into the Byzantine heartland, often fragmented and delayed, was merely a glimpse into a much larger, more pervasive reality. From the bustling markets of China to the icy fjords of Scandinavia, the world was plunged into an unseasonable chill and a persistent twilight. Consider the ancient Chinese chronicles meticulously kept records that often noted celestial phenomena and their earthly consequences. These texts speak of a year around 536, 539 CE, when a mysterious yellow dust fell from the sky, obscuring the sun and leading to widespread crop failures and famine. The descriptions, though culturally distinct, echo the accounts from the Byzantine world: a dim sun, unseasonable cold, and a profound disruption of the agricultural cycle. The Chinese, with their sophisticated bureaucracy and long history of managing natural disasters, would have implemented their own measures to combat the crisis, from distributing grain from state granaries to offering prayers and sacrifices to appease the heavens. Yet, the scale of the event would have tested even their well-established systems, leaving a lasting scar on the collective memory. In Scandinavia, a region already accustomed to long, dark winters, the impact of the volcanic winter was particularly severe. Archaeological evidence, including tree ring data, reveals a period of dramatic cooling and agricultural decline. The sagas, those epic poems that recount the deeds of heroes and the histories of kings, speak of a time of great hardship, a Fimbul winter or great winter that preceded the end of the world in Norse mythology. And while these tales are mythological, they may well contain echoes of a real historical event, a period of such profound cold and darkness that it was interpreted as a harbinger of cosmic doom. The impact on the Norse people, who relied heavily on agriculture and maritime trade, would have been devastating. potentially leading to social upheaval, migration, and a decline in population. Even in the Americas, though historical records are scarcer, there is evidence of a significant environmental downturn around the same period. Tree ring data from North America shows a period of reduced growth, indicating colder and drier conditions. In South America, the Moche civilization, known for its sophisticated art and engineering, experienced a period of decline and eventual collapse in the 6th century, a process that may have been exacerbated by the climatic changes triggered by the volcanic eruptions. The global nature of the event underscores the interconnectedness of the Earth's climate system, a delicate balance that can be profoundly disrupted by a single powerful event. This worldwide environmental crisis had a profound impact on human societies, acting as a catalyst for social, political, and economic change. In many regions, the famine and social unrest weakened existing political structures, making them vulnerable to internal collapse or external invasion. The decline of the Moche in Peru, the social upheaval in Scandinavia, and the struggles of the Byzantine Empire are all testament to the far-reaching consequences of this global event. It was a time when the very foundations of civilization were shaken, a period of profound uncertainty and transformation that would reshape the course of human history. The realization that the darkness was not a localized curse, but a global affliction, would have been a profoundly unsettling one for those living through it. It would have shattered their understanding of the world, their sense of place within it. The shared experience of suffering, while fostering solidarity in some instances, could also have fueled a sense of cosmic dread, a feeling that the entire world was in the grip of some malevolent force. The quiet rhythms of daily life, once so comforting, were now replaced by the anxious beat of uncertainty, a drum that would echo through the coming months and years, a constant reminder of the shrinking world and the growing desperation within it. The journey had begun, and with each step, the past receded, replaced by the stark, terrifying reality of the present and the daunting uncertainty of what lay ahead. The cities, once beacons of light, now flickered in the gloom, their survival a testament to the enduring, if strained, resilience of the human spirit. The ingenuity born of desperation became a quiet, persistent flame, flickering in the pervasive twilight, a testament to humanity's refusal to simply fade away. And within this flickering light, the quiet strength of community shone brightest, a beacon of hope in the deepening gloom. The spiritual anchor, unseen yet profoundly felt, provided a steadying force, allowing people to navigate the turbulent waters of a world without its accustomed light, holding on to the belief that even in the deepest darkness, a divine light would eventually prevail. The global nature of the event, a world united in gloom, served as a stark reminder of humanity's shared vulnerability, a lesson that would be learned and relearned throughout the course of history. Ancient and modern scientific theories, unraveling the mystery. For the people living through the year 536 CE, the dimming of the sun was a profound mystery, a terrifying disruption of the natural order that could only be explained through the lens of religion, superstition, or folklore. They lacked the scientific framework to understand the complex atmospheric and geological forces at play, and so they turned to the explanations that were available to them. The wrath of God, the malevolence of spirits, the dark arts of their enemies. Yet, even in the ancient world, there were those who sought more rational, if still incomplete, explanations for the phenomena they observed. Ancient scholars, particularly within the Byzantine and Chinese intellectual traditions, were keen observers of the natural world. They meticulously recorded celestial events, weather patterns, and unusual atmospheric conditions. While their interpretations were often intertwined with philosophical and religious beliefs, they also demonstrated a nascent scientific curiosity, a desire to understand the world through observation and reason. In the face of the dimming sun, these scholars would have engaged in intense debate, poring over ancient texts, observing the sky, and proposing various theories to explain the unprecedented event. Some might have hypothesized that the phenomenon was caused by an unusually dense and persistent cloud cover, though the lack of wind and the strange blue color of the sun would have challenged this explanation. Others might have considered the possibility of a distant, unseen fire, its smoke and ash carried by the winds to obscure the sun. This theory, while closer to the modern understanding, would have been purely speculative, as they had no way of knowing about the massive volcanic eruptions that were the true cause. The idea of a fire mountain in the north, as mentioned by the Byzantine soldiers, suggests that some were indeed thinking along these lines, even if they lacked the evidence to confirm their suspicions. In China, where the concept of the mandate of heaven linked the well-being of the empire to the proper conduct of the ruler and the harmony of the cosmos, the dimming of the sun would have been seen as a sign of profound imbalance. Scholars would have scrutinized historical records for precedents, looking for similar events in the past that might offer clues to the present crisis. Their explanations would have been a blend of natural philosophy and political theory, with the ultimate goal of restoring cosmic harmony and ensuring the stability of the empire. Fast forward to the modern era, and the mystery of 536 CE has been largely unraveled, thanks to the powerful tools of modern science. The primary breakthrough came from dendrochronology, the study of tree rings. Trees, in their slow, patient growth, record the conditions of their environment. A wide ring indicates a good growing season, with ample sunlight and warmth. A narrow ring signifies a period of stress, of cold and darkness. By analyzing tree rings from around the world, scientists discovered a period of dramatically reduced growth in the mid-6th century, a clear signal of a major environmental downturn. This evidence, consistent across different continents, confirmed the global nature of the event and provided a precise timeline for its occurrence. The next piece of the puzzle came from the analysis of ice cores drilled from the glaciers of Greenland and Antarctica. These ice cores, like tree rings, are natural archives trapping layers of snow and atmospheric particles from centuries past. By analyzing the chemical composition of the ice, scientists can identify volcanic eruptions which leave a distinct signature of sulfate aerosols. In the ice cores, a massive spike in sulfate deposits was found, dating precisely to the years 536 and 540 CE. This was the smoking gun, the definitive evidence that a massive volcanic eruption, or series of eruptions, had occurred, injecting vast quantities of sulfur dioxide into the stratosphere. These sulfur dioxide particles, when they reach the stratosphere, are converted into sulfuric acid aerosols, which are highly effective at scattering sunlight back into space. This creates a volcanic winter, a period of global dimming and cooling that can last for several years. The scale of the eruption required to cause the observed effects would have been immense, far larger than any eruption in recent recorded history. The exact location of the volcano remains a subject of debate, with candidates proposed in Iceland, North America, and even the tropics. Regardless of its precise origin, the impact was global, a testament to the interconnectedness of the Earth's climate system. The unraveling of the mystery of 536 CE is a powerful example of the scientific method in action. It is a story of patient observation, of meticulous data collection, and of the convergence of evidence from different fields of study. It is also a story that highlights the profound difference between ancient and modern worldviews. For the people of the 6th century, the dimming of the sun was a terrifying, inexplicable event that shook their faith in the stability of the world. For us, it is a complex but understandable phenomenon, a stark reminder of the power of natural forces and the fragility of our own civilization. The quiet rhythms of daily life, once so comforting, were now replaced by the anxious beat of uncertainty, a drum that would echo through the coming months and years, a constant reminder of the shrinking world and the growing desperation within it. The journey had begun, and with each step, the past receded, replaced by the stark, terrifying reality of the present and the daunting uncertainty of what lay ahead. The cities, once beacons of light, now flickered in the gloom, their survival a testament to the enduring, if strained, resilience of the human spirit. The ingenuity born of desperation became a quiet, persistent flame, flickering in the pervasive twilight, a testament to humanity's refusal to simply fade away. And within this flickering light, the quiet strength of community shone brightest, a beacon of hope in the deepening gloom. The spiritual anchor, unseen yet profoundly felt, provided a steadying force, allowing people to navigate the turbulent waters of a world without its accustomed light, holding on to the belief that even in the deepest darkness, a divine light would eventually prevail. The global nature of the event, a world united in gloom, served as a stark reminder of humanity's shared vulnerability, a lesson that would be learned and relearned throughout the course of history. The scientific explanation, while offering a rational understanding, does not diminish the profound human drama of the event. Rather, it provides a new lens through which to view the quiet, desperate struggle of a world plunged into an unexpected and terrifying twilight. Demographic and economic consequences. A world reshaped. The profound environmental shock of 536 CE, with its prolonged dimming of the sun and the ensuing agricultural collapse, triggered a cascade of demographic and economic consequences that reshaped societies across the globe. This was not merely a period of hardship. It was a fundamental reordering of human populations and economic systems, leaving a lasting imprint on the course of history. The silent, chilling stillness in the fields translated into a devastating silence in the villages and cities as populations dwindled and the intricate webs of commerce unraveled. The most immediate and tragic demographic consequence was a significant increase in mortality rates. Famine, the direct result of widespread crop failures, led to mass starvation. Bodies weakened by hunger became highly susceptible to disease, and epidemics, such as the devastating plague of Justinian, which began shortly after this period, found fertile ground in malnourished populations. While the plague itself was a separate biological event, its impact was undoubtedly exacerbated by the preceding years of environmental stress and widespread malnutrition. The combined effect of famine and disease led to a sharp decline in population across many regions, leaving behind ghost villages and depopulated urban centers. Imagine the quiet emptiness that would have settled over once bustling communities. The laughter of children, the chatter of neighbors, the sounds of daily life, all would have been replaced by a haunting silence. The demographic decline was not uniform. Some regions, more resilient or less affected by the immediate environmental impact, might have fared better. But across vast swaths of Europe, Asia, and potentially the Americas, the human footprint shrank, leaving behind a world that was both literally and figuratively emptier. Economically, the impact was equally devastating. Agriculture, the backbone of most ancient economies, was crippled. The loss of harvests meant a drastic reduction in food supply, leading to hyperinflation in food prices. The value of land, once the primary source of wealth, plummeted as its productivity vanished. Trade routes, already vulnerable to political instability, were further disrupted by the lack of goods to exchange and the widespread insecurity that accompanied social breakdown. Merchants, unable to acquire or transport goods, saw their livelihoods vanish, and the intricate networks of credit and exchange that underpinned long-distance commerce began to unravel. In the Byzantine Empire, Justinian's ambitious plans for reconquest and imperial expansion were severely hampered. The wars, already costly in terms of manpower and resources, became unsustainable in a world struggling with famine and disease. The empire's tax base, dependent on agricultural output, shrank dramatically, further limiting its ability to fund its armies and maintain its vast bureaucracy. The grand visions of a restored Roman Empire gave way to the grim reality of internal struggle and a desperate fight for survival. The empire, though it would endure, was irrevocably weakened, its trajectory altered by the environmental catastrophe. Beyond the immediate economic collapse, the period of the volcanic winter also triggered long-term shifts in economic structures. The scarcity of labor, a direct consequence of population decline, might have led to changes in land tenure and labor relations. The focus shifted from surplus production to mere subsistence, leading to a more localized and fragmented economy. The emphasis on self-sufficiency and local production would have increased as communities became more isolated and less reliant on distant markets. The demographic and economic consequences of 536 CE were not merely statistics, they were lived realities experienced by countless individuals and families. They were the silent tragedies of empty cradles, of fields left untended, of markets devoid of goods. They were the stories of communities shattered, of dreams unfulfilled, and of a world reshaped by forces beyond human control. The quiet rhythms of daily life, once so comforting, were now replaced by the anxious beat of uncertainty, a drum that would echo through the coming months and years, a constant reminder of the shrinking world and the growing desperation within it. The journey had begun, and with each step the past receded, replaced by the stark, terrifying reality of the present and the daunting uncertainty of what lay ahead. The cities, once beacons of light, now flickered in the gloom, their survival a testament to the enduring, if strained, resilience of the human spirit. The ingenuity born of desperation became a quiet, persistent flame, flickering in the pervasive twilight, a testament to humanity's refusal to simply fade away. And within this flickering light, the quiet strength of community shone brightest, a beacon of hope in the deepening gloom. The spiritual anchor, unseen yet profoundly felt, provided a steadying force, allowing people to navigate the turbulent waters of a world without its accustomed light, holding on to the belief that even in the deepest darkness, a divine light would eventually prevail. The global nature of the event, a world united in gloom, served as a stark reminder of humanity's shared vulnerability, a lesson that would be learned and relearned throughout the course of history. The scientific explanation, while offering a rational understanding, does not diminish the profound human drama of the event. Rather, it provides a new lens through which to view the quiet, desperate struggle of a world plunged into an unexpected and terrifying twilight. The demographic and economic consequences, a silent reshaping of the human world, underscore the profound and lasting impact of a year that truly changed everything. The legacy of 536 CE, a shadow cast on history. The year 536 CE, though often overlooked in grand historical narratives, left an indelible mark on the course of human civilization. Its legacy is not one of triumphant empires or heroic battles, but of a profound environmental shock that subtly yet powerfully reshaped societies, accelerated existing trends, and perhaps even laid the groundwork for future developments. It was a silent, pervasive force that rippled through the fabric of the world, influencing everything from political structures to cultural beliefs. One of the most significant legacies of 536 CE was its contribution to the decline of classical antiquity and the transition into the early Middle Ages. The Roman Empire, already fractured and weakened, faced an existential crisis. While the Western Roman Empire had already fallen, the Eastern Roman or Byzantine Empire was still a formidable power. However, the environmental catastrophe, coupled with a subsequent plague of Justinian, severely weakened its resources, manpower, and administrative capacity. Justinian's ambitious reconquest of the Western Mediterranean, already a strain, became even more difficult to sustain. The dream of a unified Roman Empire, already fading, was dealt a severe blow, paving the way for the emergence of new political entities and the fragmentation of the Mediterranean world. In Europe, the widespread famine and social disruption contributed to the instability that characterized the early medieval period. The migrations of various Germanic tribes, already a factor in the collapse of the Western Roman Empire, might have been exacerbated by the environmental pressures, leading to further displacement and conflict. The period saw a decline in urban centers, a shift towards more localized economies, and a strengthening of feudal structures as people sought security and sustenance from local lords in a world that had become increasingly unpredictable. Beyond the immediate political and economic shifts, the events of 536 CE also had a profound impact on human psychology and worldview. The experience of a prolonged, unnatural darkness, coupled with widespread suffering, would have reinforced existing religious beliefs about divine judgment and the fragility of the earthly realm. It might have fueled a greater emphasis on asceticism, on seeking spiritual salvation in a world perceived as increasingly fallen and unstable. The memory of the worst year would have been passed down through generations, shaping folklore, oral traditions, and perhaps even influencing the development of new religious and philosophical ideas. In Asia, particularly in China, the environmental shock contributed to political instability and dynastic changes. The Northern Wei dynasty, already facing internal strife, experienced severe famines and rebellions during this period, which ultimately led to its fragmentation. The subsequent Sui and Tang dynasties, which would usher in a new golden age for China, emerged from a landscape that had been profoundly reshaped by the environmental and social upheavals of the 6th century. The legacy of 536 CE is also a testament to the interconnectedness of the global climate system and its profound influence on human history. It serves as a stark reminder that even in an age without industrial pollution or advanced technology, natural events can have a devastating and far-reaching impact on human society. The story of the dimming sun is a powerful illustration of environmental determinism, demonstrating how climate can act as a silent yet powerful architect of historical change. Ultimately, the year 536 CE stands as a quiet yet profound turning point. It was a year when the world, as people knew it, was irrevocably altered, forcing humanity to adapt, to innovate, and to find new ways to survive in a profoundly changed environment. Its legacy is not etched in grand monuments or celebrated victories, but in the subtle shifts of power, the demographic changes, the economic realignments, and the enduring human spirit that found ways to persevere even when the very sun seemed to have abandoned them. It is a story that reminds us of the fragility of our existence, the power of nature, and the remarkable resilience of humanity in the face of overwhelming odds. The quiet rhythms of daily life, once so comforting, were now replaced by the anxious beat of uncertainty, a drum that would echo through the coming months and years, a constant reminder of the shrinking world and the growing desperation within it. The journey had begun, and with each step the past receded, replaced by the stark, terrifying reality of the present and the daunting uncertainty of what lay ahead. The cities, once beacons of light, now flickered in the gloom, their survival a testament to the enduring of strained resilience of the human spirit. The ingenuity born of desperation became a quiet, persistent flame, flickering in the pervasive twilight, a testament to humanity's refusal to simply fade away. And within this flickering light, the quiet strength of community shone brightest, a beacon of hope in the deepening gloom. The spiritual anchor, unseen yet profoundly felt, provided a steadying force, allowing people to navigate the turbulent waters of a world without its accustomed light, holding on to the belief that even in the deepest darkness, a divine light would eventually prevail. The global nature of the event, a world united in gloom, served as a stark reminder of humanity's shared vulnerability, a lesson that would be learned and relearned throughout the course of history. The scientific explanation, while offering a rational understanding, does not diminish the profound human drama of the event. Rather, it provides a new lens through which to view the quiet, desperate struggle of a world plunged into an unexpected and terrifying twilight, the demographic and economic consequences, a silent reshaping of the human world, underscore the profound and lasting impact of a year that truly changed everything. And the legacy of 536 CE, a shadow cast on history, continues to resonate, a quiet testament to the enduring power of nature and the remarkable adaptability of the human spirit. Chapter 5. The slow return to light and reconstruction. The first signs of improvement. A faint glimmer of hope. After what seemed like an eternity, after months of living under the oppressive blue-tinged twilight, a subtle shift began to occur. It was not a sudden, dramatic return to the vibrant golden light of old, but a gradual, almost imperceptible brightening, a faint glimmer of hope that slowly, tentatively began to pierce through the pervasive gloom. For those who had endured the long darkness, these first signs of improvement were met with a mixture of cautious optimism and a deep-seated fear that it might be a cruel illusion. Imagine waking one morning not to the familiar muted blue, but to a slightly softer, less oppressive shade. The sun, still a pale disk, seemed to possess a fraction more intensity, its light less diffused, its outline a little clearer. Perhaps a faint, almost imperceptible warmth could be felt on your skin, a sensation long forgotten. The world, which had been shrouded in a perpetual dusk, now seemed to be emerging from a deep, prolonged slumber, its colors slowly, tentatively beginning to reassert themselves. In the fields, the change was even more profound. The stunted, withered plants, which had seemed destined for oblivion, now showed the faintest signs of life. A new, delicate green might have appeared at the base of a seemingly dead stalk, a tiny, fragile promise of renewal. The earth, which had been cold and unyielding, began to soften. Its surface no longer perpetually frosted. The air, while still cool, lacked the biting chill that had permeated every breath for so long. The sounds of nature, too, began to return. A tentative bird song, a faint buzzing of insects, the gentle rustle of leaves and a breeze that carried a hint of spring. These were the subtle harbingers of a world slowly, painstakingly coming back to life. For the villagers, these changes were observed with a quiet intensity. They had learned through bitter experience not to hope too fiercely, not to trust too readily in the fleeting promises of the sky. Yet the evidence was undeniable. The days were indeed growing longer, the light stronger, the cold less severe. The cycle of seasons, which had seemed to break down entirely, was slowly, hesitantly reasserting itself. The memory of the long darkness was still fresh, a haunting presence that lingered in their minds, but it was now accompanied by a new, fragile hope, a quiet belief that the worst might finally be over. News from afar, once a source of despair, now carried a different tone. Travelers spoke of similar improvements in other regions, of skies that were slowly clearing, of temperatures that were gradually rising. The reports from Constantinople indicated that the emperor, though still grappling with the aftermath of the crisis, was now able to focus on rebuilding, on restoring the empire to its former glory. The grain ships from Egypt, once a desperate measure, now arrived with a sense of renewed purpose. Their cargo, a symbol of a world slowly healing. The return of the light was not just a physical phenomenon, it was a psychological one. The pervasive sense of dread which had settled over the communities like a shroud began to lift. Laughter, though still subdued, became more frequent. The faces of the villagers, once etched with worry and despair, now held a glimmer of something akin to peace. The future, which had seemed an impenetrable wall of darkness, now offered a faint, distant horizon, a possibility of renewal. This slow, gradual return to light was a testament to the resilience of the natural world, its capacity for healing and regeneration. It was also a testament to the enduring human spirit, its ability to find hope even in the bleakest of circumstances, to persevere through unimaginable hardship, and to recognize the faintest glimmer of promise in a world that had been so profoundly altered. The long night was ending, and with each passing day, the world and its inhabitants began to breathe a little easier, looking towards a future that, while still uncertain, was no longer shrouded in an impenetrable, blue-tinged gloom. The reconstruction of communities, a collective endeavor, with the faint glimmer of hope now a more discernible light. The communities that had endured the long darkness began the arduous yet hopeful process of reconstruction. This was not a task for individuals but a collective endeavor, a testament to the enduring human capacity for cooperation and resilience. The shared experience of hardship had forged new bonds, and the memory of the famine and cold served as a powerful motivator to rebuild, to reestablish the rhythms of life that had been so profoundly disrupted. In the villages, the first priority was the land. Farmers, their bodies still lean from the years of scarcity, returned to their fields with a renewed sense of purpose. The earth, though still recovering, was now more receptive, and the warmer temperatures allowed for the planting of new seeds. This time, however, the approach was different. The lessons learned from the years of failure were not forgotten. There would have been a greater emphasis on diversification, on planting a wider variety of crops to mitigate the risk of a single crop failure. New techniques, born of desperation and ingenuity during the dark years, might have been adopted, such as improved irrigation methods or the use of natural fertilizers to enrich the depleted soil. The communal spirit, strengthened by shared suffering, would have manifested in collective labor, with neighbors helping neighbors to clear land, plow fields, and sow seeds, ensuring that no one was left behind in the vital task of feeding the community. Homes, too, needed attention. Many had fallen into disrepair during the years of neglect, their roofs leaking, their walls crumbling. The villagers would have banded together, sharing what materials they had, repairing structures, and making them more resilient against future environmental shocks. The focus was on practicality and sustainability, on building homes that could withstand the unpredictable whims of nature. The quiet sounds of hammering and sawing, once rare, would have become a comforting symphony of rebuilding, a tangible sign of a community reasserting its presence in the world. In the cities, the task of reconstruction was on a grander scale, yet the underlying principles remained the same. Constantinople, though it had suffered immensely, still stood as a symbol of imperial power and resilience. Emperor Justinian, with the immediate crisis of famine somewhat abated, could now turn his attention to the long-term recovery of his empire. This involved not just the physical rebuilding of infrastructure, roads, bridges, and public buildings that had fallen into disrepair, but also the restoration of economic networks and trade routes, once disrupted, were slowly reestablished, and merchants, with renewed confidence, began to venture out, seeking goods and markets to revitalize the economy. The demographic recovery was a slower, more gradual process. The population decline caused by famine and disease would take generations to fully reverse. However, with the return of food security, birth rates would have slowly begun to rise and the overall health of the population would have improved. The memory of the lost ones would have lingered, a somber reminder of the years of darkness, but it would have been tempered by the renewed hope for the future, a quiet determination to honor their memory by rebuilding a stronger, more resilient society. Beyond the physical and economic aspects, there was also a profound psychological reconstruction. The trauma of the dark years would have left an indelible mark, but the act of rebuilding, of working together towards a common goal, would have been deeply therapeutic. The shared narratives of survival, the stories of quiet heroism and collective endurance would have become part of the community's identity, passed down through generations as a testament to their strength. The return of familiar routines, the laughter of children playing in the sun, now truly golden once more, and the simple comfort of a full belly would have slowly, gently healed the invisible wounds of fear and despair. This period of reconstruction was not without its challenges. Resources were still scarce, and the memory of hardship was fresh. But it was also a time of immense purpose, a period when humanity, having faced the abyss, chose to turn back towards the light, to rebuild not just their homes and their fields, but their very sense of community and their faith in the future. The quiet rhythms of daily life, once so comforting, were now replaced by the anxious beat of uncertainty, a drum that would echo through the coming months and years, a constant reminder of the shrinking world and the growing desperation within it. The journey had begun, and with each step the past receded, replaced by the stark, terrifying reality of the present and the daunting uncertainty of what lay ahead. The cities, once beacons of light, now flickered in the gloom, their survival a testament to the enduring, if strained, resilience of the human spirit. The ingenuity born of desperation became a quiet, persistent flame, flickering in the pervasive twilight, a testament to humanity's refusal to simply fade away. And within this flickering light, the quiet strength of community shone brightest, a beacon of hope in the deepening gloom. The spiritual anchor, unseen yet profoundly felt, provided a steadying force, allowing people to navigate the turbulent waters of a world without its accustomed light, holding on to the belief that even in the deepest darkness, a divine light would eventually prevail. The global nature of the event, a world united in gloom, served as a stark reminder of humanity's shared vulnerability, a lesson that would be learned and relearned throughout the course of history. The scientific explanation, while offering a rational understanding, does not diminish the profound human drama of the event. Rather, it provides a new lens through which to view the quiet, desperate struggle of a world plunged into an unexpected and terrifying twilight. The demographic and economic consequences, a silent reshaping of the human world, underscore the profound and lasting impact of a year that truly changed everything. And the legacy of 536 CE, a shadow cast on history, continues to resonate, a quiet testament to the enduring power of nature and the remarkable adaptability of the human spirit. The reconstruction of communities, a slow and steady ascent from the depths of despair, became a powerful affirmation of life, a testament to the indomitable will of humanity to not just survive, but to thrive, even after the longest night. Lessons learned, wisdom forged in darkness. The profound and harrowing experience of the year 536 CE and the long period of recovery that followed left an indelible mark on the collective consciousness of humanity. It was a harsh, undeniable lesson in the fragility of existence, the unpredictable power of nature, and the vital importance of preparation and cooperation. The wisdom forged in that darkness, though often unspoken, would subtly influence the decisions and priorities of generations to come. One of the most significant lessons learned was the absolute dependence on the natural world and the folly of taking its rhythms for granted. The sun, once a constant and reliable presence, had shown its capacity to dim, to withdraw its life-giving warmth. This would have fostered a deeper respect for the environment, a more acute awareness of the delicate balance that sustained life. Agricultural practices might have become more diversified with a greater emphasis on resilience and adaptability. And the memory of widespread crop failures would have driven efforts to store more food, to develop more robust preservation techniques, and to explore alternative food sources, ensuring that communities were better prepared for future environmental shocks. Beyond practical considerations, the crisis also underscored the critical importance of community and mutual aid. In the face of overwhelming individual hardship, it was the collective strength of villages and cities, the willingness of neighbors to help neighbors, that often made the difference between survival and despair. This would have reinforced social bonds, encouraging greater cooperation and a stronger sense of shared responsibility. The lessons of solidarity learned in the crucible of famine and cold would have been passed down through oral traditions, through the quiet example of elders, and through the very fabric of social customs. For rulers and authorities, the events of 536 CE served as a stark reminder of their vulnerability to forces beyond their control. Even the mightiest empires, with their vast armies and sophisticated bureaucracies, were powerless against a global environmental catastrophe. This might have led to a reevaluation of priorities, a greater focus on internal stability and the well-being of their populations, rather than solely on external conquest and expansion. The need for effective governance in times of crisis, for clear communication, and for equitable distribution of resources would have become painfully apparent. The memory of widespread unrest and social breakdown would have served as a powerful incentive to build more resilient and responsive administrative systems. Spiritually, the experience would have deepened faith for many, reinforcing the belief in a divine plan and the need for humility in the face of cosmic forces. For others, it might have sparked profound existential questions, leading to new philosophical inquiries about humanity's place in the universe. Regardless of individual interpretations, the event would have left an indelible mark on the spiritual landscape, shaping religious practices, prayers, and narratives for centuries. Perhaps the most enduring lesson was the resilience of the human spirit itself. Faced with unimaginable hardship, with the very fabric of their world unraveling, people had found ways to adapt, to innovate, and to endure. They had mourned their losses, but they had also rebuilt, demonstrating an unwavering will to survive and to create a better future. This quiet strength, this capacity for perseverance in the face of overwhelming odds, became a powerful testament to the indomitable nature of humanity. The lessons learned from 536 CE were not always codified in written laws or grand pronouncements. More often, they were absorbed into the collective wisdom of generations, influencing daily practices, social norms, and cultural values. They were the quiet, persistent echoes of a time when the world had held its breath, and humanity had learned, through bitter experience, the profound importance of humility, preparedness, cooperation, and the enduring power of hope. This wisdom, forged in darkness, became a guiding light, subtly shaping the trajectory of human civilization, a quiet testament to the enduring impact of a year that truly changed everything. In this tranquil space, as the world outside recedes, we invite you to surrender to the narrative, to let the gentle flow of words carry you into a state of profound relaxation. Our journey is not merely an intellectual exercise, it is an invitation to stillness, a pathway to the quiet depths of your own being. The historical details we explore are but a vehicle, a soft current upon which your mind can drift, unburdened by the anxieties of the day. Allow the imagery to form in your mind's eye, not as sharp, demanding visions, but as soft, shifting impressions, like clouds passing across a moonlit sky. The purpose here is not to stimulate, but to soothe, not to awaken, but to gently guide you towards the embrace of sleep. Consider the profound simplicity of life in that distant era. Before the great dimming, the world moved at a pace dictated by the sun's arc and the moon's gentle pull. Days were measured by the shadow's length, seasons by the subtle shifts in the wind and the changing hues of the landscape. There was a deep, intuitive connection to the natural world, a reliance on its rhythms that modern life has largely forgotten. It is this primal connection that makes the events of 536 CE so profoundly unsettling. When the very source of light and warmth faltered, it was not just an environmental catastrophe, it was a cosmic betrayal, a disruption of the fundamental order that governed their lives. Yet, even in this disruption, there is a quiet beauty to be found in the human spirit's unwavering quest for meaning and its remarkable capacity for endurance. Our narrative will unfold with a deliberate slowness, mirroring the gradual onset of the darkness itself. We will linger on sensory details, painting a picture not of dramatic events, but of the subtle shifts in atmosphere, the quiet anxieties that permeated the air, the gentle resilience of everyday people. You will hear the rustle of straw, feel the unseasonable chill, and perhaps even taste the bitterness of stretched rations. But these sensations are offered not to disturb, but to ground you, to immerse you gently in a world that, despite its hardships, still held moments of quiet beauty and profound human connection. Let these details become part of your own journey towards rest, a soft hum in the background of your consciousness as you drift towards sleep. The year 536 CE stands as a unique testament to the Earth's volatile nature and humanity's enduring vulnerability. It was a time when the very air became a veil, when the sun, that ancient symbol of life and hope, became a pale, distant memory. Yet, it is precisely in this vulnerability that we find strength. The story of 536 CE is not just a chronicle of disaster. It is a quiet epic of adaptation, of communities drawing closer, of individuals finding inner reserves they never knew they possessed. It is a story that reminds us that even when the external world plunges into darkness, the inner light of human spirit can continue to flicker, a testament to our capacity for hope and perseverance. Allow this thought to settle gently within you, a comforting presence as you prepare to surrender to the quiet embrace of the night. As we delve into the nuances of this historical period, remember that the aim is not to analyze or to dissect, but to observe, to feel, to absorb. Let the facts and figures recede and allow the atmosphere of the past to envelop you. Imagine the quiet resilience of a mother tending her children in the dim light, the steady hands of a farmer working a field under a muted sky, the hushed conversations of villagers seeking solace in shared uncertainty. These are the moments we will explore, not with urgency, but with a calm, contemplative gaze. The world of 536 CE, in all its quiet struggle, offers a unique mirror to our own capacity for endurance, a gentle reminder that even in the face of profound change, the human heart continues its steady beat. And with that thought, allow your own heart to slow, your breath to deepen, as we continue our quiet descent into the past, towards the peaceful shores of sleep. In the quietude of this moment, let the sounds of your day fade into the background. The gentle hum of the narrative is all that remains, a soft current guiding you away from the shores of wakefulness. We are not rushing, nor are we striving. We are simply observing, allowing the story of a distant past to unfold with a natural, unhurried pace. This is a journey of the mind designed to release the tensions of the body, to quiet the restless thoughts that often keep us from the deep, restorative sleep we crave. Think of the sky above you not as a vast, empty expanse, but as a canvas upon which the story of 536 CE was painted. A canvas that, for a time, was draped in shades of blue and gray obscuring the familiar brilliance of the sun. This was a world where shadows themselves became a luxury, where the very concept of a clear, bright day became a cherished memory. Yet, even in this muted palette, life persisted. The human spirit, like a resilient seed, found ways to sprout and grow, even in the most challenging of soils. It is this quiet strength, this unwavering persistence, that we will gently explore. Our focus remains on the subtle, the nuanced, the almost imperceptible shifts that define this historical period. We are not seeking grand pronouncements or dramatic confrontations. Instead, we are observing the quiet dignity of everyday survival, the small acts of courage that define a life lived under extraordinary circumstances. The way a mother might hum a lullaby to her child in the dim light, the shared warmth of a communal fire, the silent understanding between neighbors. These are the moments that truly illuminate the human experience in 536 CE. Let these images drift through your mind like wisps of smoke from a distant hearth, comforting in their simplicity. The narrative will continue to unfold like a gentle river flowing towards the sea. Each paragraph, each sentence is designed to contribute to a sense of calm, a deepening of relaxation. There is no need to grasp, no need to analyze. Simply allow the words to wash over you, to become part of the quiet landscape of your inner world. The story of 536 CE is a reminder that even in the face of profound change, the fundamental rhythms of life, breathing, resting, dreaming, remain. And it is to these fundamental rhythms that we now gently return, inviting you to sink deeper into the embrace of tranquility. As the details of this ancient world gently fill your awareness, you may find your own breath deepening, your muscles softening, your mind beginning to quiet. This is the purpose of our journey, to provide a gentle anchor for your thoughts, allowing the currents of sleep to carry you away. The story of the dimmed sun, of the unseasonable cold, of the quiet resilience of a world transformed, is a story that invites contemplation, not agitation. It is a story that reminds us of the vastness of time, the enduring cycles of nature, and the remarkable capacity of the human spirit to adapt and to find peace even in the most challenging of times. Let this understanding settle within you, a comforting presence as you drift further into the quietude of the night. The journey continues, but your path now leads towards the peaceful realm of dreams. Allow your mind to gently release any lingering thoughts of the day. Imagine them as small, wispy clouds drifting slowly across a vast, empty sky until they dissipate completely. Here, in this space, there is only the present moment and the soft, rhythmic cadence of the narrative. We are exploring a time when the world itself seemed to slow, when the familiar rush of life was replaced by a quiet, almost meditative stillness. This stillness, though born of hardship, can now serve as a gentle invitation to your own inner calm, a pathway to profound rest. Consider the profound silence that must have descended upon the world in 536 CE. The usual sounds of bustling markets, of children at play, of birdsong in the morning light, all would have been muted, softened by the pervasive haze and the chill in the air. This was a silence that spoke not of emptiness, but of a world holding its breath, waiting. And in that waiting, perhaps a deeper awareness emerged, an awareness of the subtle shifts in the wind, the faint rustle of leaves, the quiet beat of one's own heart. It is this heightened awareness, this gentle focus on the immediate, that we seek to cultivate now, guiding you away from distraction and towards the tranquil depths of sleep. The historical details we present are not meant to be absorbed with analytical rigor. Instead, let them wash over you like the gentle current of a slow-moving river. Each fact, each description is a drop in that river, contributing to a larger flow that carries you effortlessly towards repose. There is no need to remember, no need to categorize. Simply allow the narrative to unfold, creating a soft, immersive landscape within your mind. This is a journey of sensory experience designed to engage your imagination in a way that soothes and calms, preparing your mind and body for a night of deep, restorative sleep. As we continue our exploration of this unique historical period, remember the overarching purpose: to provide a gentle, unwavering guide to your rest. The story of 536 CE, with its quiet struggle and its eventual return to light, offers a powerful metaphor for the cycles of life, for the periods of darkness that inevitably give way to renewed hope. Let this understanding settle within you, a comforting presence that assures you of the natural rhythm of renewal. The sun, though it dimmed, eventually returned. And so too will your own energy and vitality be restored with the coming of a new day. Allow your eyelids to grow heavy, your breathing to deepen and slow. The world of 536 CE, with its muted colors and its quiet resilience, is now a part of your inner landscape, a gentle backdrop for your journey into dreams. There is nothing left to do, nowhere else to be, only the soft murmur of the narrative, a lullaby woven from the threads of history, guiding you deeper and deeper into the peaceful embrace of sleep. Surrender to the quiet, to the calm, to the profound stillness that now surrounds you. Rest now and let the gentle currents of the past carry you into a night of profound and undisturbed slumber. The journey is complete and peace awaits. The awakening in the twilight, a deeper immersion. The initial moments of that fateful morning in 536 CE were not marked by panic, but by a profound and unsettling sense of cognitive dissonance. The human mind, so adept at recognizing patterns, at finding comfort in the familiar rhythms of the day, was suddenly confronted with a reality that defied all previous experience. The rooster's crow, a sound that had for millennia signaled the imminent arrival of the sun, was now a hollow promise, an echo in a world that refused to awaken. This was not merely a cloudy day, it was a fundamental disruption of the cosmic order, a subtle yet profound unraveling of the very fabric of reality. Let us delve deeper into the sensory experience of that morning. Imagine the air, not just cold, but heavy, with a dampness that seemed to cling to everything, a palpable weight that made each breath feel more deliberate. The light, that ethereal blue, would have cast no sharp shadows, but instead a soft, diffused gloom that blurred the edges of the world, making familiar objects seem strange and distant. The world would have appeared as if viewed through a veil, its colors muted, its textures softened, its very substance rendered less certain. This was a world that invited introspection, a quiet turning inward, as the external landscape became a reflection of the growing uncertainty within. The psychological impact of this sensory deprivation would have been immense. The lack of direct sunlight, the absence of the familiar warmth on the skin, would have triggered a primal, instinctual unease. The human body, so attuned to the cycles of light and darkness, would have been thrown into a state of confusion. The usual surge of energy that accompanies the dawn would have been absent, replaced by a persistent lethargy, a feeling of being perpetually suspended in the liminal space between night and day. This was not just a physical cold, it was a cold that seeped into the very bones, a psychological chill that mirrored the dimming of the external world. Consider the reactions of the animals, those silent sentinels of the natural world. Their confusion would have been a powerful, unsettling omen for the villagers. The chickens, their internal clocks thrown into disarray, would have huddled together, their usual morning foraging abandoned. The goat, its instinct screaming that something was profoundly wrong, would have bleated nervously, its calls echoing in the unusual stillness. The dogs, usually so boisterous, would have whined softly, their tails tucked between their legs, their eyes reflecting the same bewilderment as their human companions. The silence of the birds, the absence of their usual morning chorus, would have been perhaps the most unnerving sign of all, a profound and unsettling void in the auditory landscape of the village. In the face of this overwhelming strangeness, the human mind would have desperately sought explanations, however irrational. The initial thoughts would have been mundane, a thick fog, a lingering storm. But as the hours stretched on and the unnatural twilight persisted, these rationalizations would have given way to more primal fears. The stories of old, the tales of angry gods and malevolent spirits, would have resurfaced with a new and terrifying relevance. The world, once a predictable and ordered place, had suddenly become a realm of myth and magic, a place where the impossible had become real. Old Elena's pronouncement of the end times, while perhaps dramatic, would have resonated deeply with the villagers. It offered a framework, however terrifying, for understanding the incomprehensible. It provided a narrative, a sense of meaning, in a world that had suddenly become meaningless. Her words, born of a lifetime of experience and a deep-seated belief in the supernatural, would have been a powerful force in shaping the collective response of the community. They would have validated the growing fear, given voice to the unspoken anxieties, and set the stage for the wave of superstition and religious fervor that was to follow. Your father's reaction, his attempt to cling to the familiar routines of work, was not an act of denial, but a desperate attempt to impose order on a world that had descended into chaos. In the face of overwhelming uncertainty, the simple, repetitive tasks of daily life offered a fragile sense of control, a way to anchor oneself in a sea of confusion. His words, "The fields won't plow themselves," were a mantra of defiance, a quiet refusal to surrender to the encroaching darkness. Yet, even in his stoicism, the underlying fear was palpable. His admission, "I don't know," was a crack in the facade of paternal authority, a moment of vulnerability that revealed the true depth of his unease. The discovery that the sun cast no shadows was the final, irrefutable proof that the world had fundamentally changed. It was a detail so strange, so contrary to the laws of nature as they knew them, that it would have bordered on the surreal. It was a visual representation of the world's new, diminished state, a stark and unsettling symbol of the fading light. This was not just a change in the weather, it was a shift in the very physics of their reality, a quiet, terrifying glimpse into a world that was no longer governed by the familiar rules of the past. The awakening in the twilight was not just a new day, it was the dawn of a new and terrifying age. an age of uncertainty, of fear, and of a quiet, desperate struggle for survival in a world that had been plunged into an endless, shadowless gloom. First reactions and superstitions, the search for meaning in the gloom. The human mind abhors a vacuum, especially a vacuum of meaning. In the face of the inexplicable, the psyche will grasp at any available narrative, any framework that can provide a semblance of order and understanding. For the people of 536 CE, steeped in a world where the divine and the demonic were ever-present realities, the dimming of the sun was not a random atmospheric event. It was a message, a deliberate act that demanded interpretation. The search for meaning in the gloom became a collective obsession, a desperate attempt to decipher the will of the unseen forces that governed their lives. The initial reactions were a complex tapestry of fear, awe, and a desperate clinging to the familiar. The village, once a community bound by shared labor and simple faith, became a crucible of competing anxieties. The elders, their authority amplified by the crisis, became the primary interpreters of the celestial drama. Their pronouncements, drawn from a deep well of folklore, religious scripture, and personal experience, carried immense weight, shaping the emotional landscape of the community. Old Elena's apocalyptic interpretation, while terrifying, offered a strange kind of comfort. It placed the event within a known narrative, the Christian story of sin, judgment, and redemption. It suggested a cause and a potential solution, repentance and prayer. This narrative, however grim, was preferable to the terrifying alternative, that the universe was chaotic, indifferent, and capable of random acts of profound cruelty. The turn towards religious fervor was not just an expression of faith, it was a psychological defense mechanism, a way of imposing a moral order on a world that had become physically disordered. The church, once a place of quiet Sunday worship, became the epicenter of the village's emotional life. Its stone walls, cool and silent, offered a refuge from the pervasive gloom outside. The flickering candlelight, the scent of incense, the rhythmic chanting of prayers, these sensory inputs created a sacred space, a bubble of perceived safety in a world that felt increasingly hostile. The priest, his role elevated from spiritual guide to cosmic intermediary, became a figure of immense power and responsibility. His sermons, once focused on simple moral lessons, now grappled with the profound theological questions raised by the crisis. Was this a punishment, a test, a sign of the imminent second coming? The answers he provided, however tentative, would have been clung to with a desperate intensity. But the Christian narrative was not the only one available. Beneath the surface of official religious doctrine, a rich and ancient layer of pagan and animistic beliefs persisted. These older traditions, often dismissed as superstition in more stable times, now resurfaced with a renewed vigor. People would have turned to the folk magic that had been passed down through generations, the charms and rituals designed to appease nature spirits and ward off malevolent forces. Amulets would have been worn, protective symbols etched onto doorways and offerings left at ancient shrines in the woods. This was not a rejection of Christianity, but a hedging of bets, a desperate attempt to appeal to any and all powers that might have influence over the unfolding events. The whispers of human malice, of Persian mages and Gothic sorcerers, also served a crucial psychological function. They provided a tangible enemy, a focus for the collective fear and anger. It was easier, in many ways, to believe in a human adversary than in an indifferent or wrathful God. This externalization of the threat allowed for a sense of agency, a feeling that something could be done, even if it was only to curse the names of their distant, unseen enemies. It also reinforced a sense of in-group identity. We who were the victims of this magical assault, they who were the perpetrators. This in turn could have fostered a sense of solidarity, a shared purpose in the face of a common foe. The headman's attempts to promote reason and practicality, while well-intentioned, would have largely fallen on deaf ears. In a world where the fundamental laws of nature seemed to have been suspended, Reason itself had lost its authority. The villagers were not living in a world of cause and effect, but in a world of signs and portent. The flight of a bird, the shape of a cloud, the dream of a restless sleeper, all were scrutinized for hidden meaning, for clues to the great unfolding mystery. This was a world where intuition and emotion held sway over logic and evidence, a world where the search for meaning, however desperate, trumped the acceptance of a terrifying, inexplicable reality. The first reactions to the dimming of the sun were not just a descent into fear and superstition. They were a profound and complex human response to an existential crisis. They were a testament to the enduring power of narrative, the deep-seated need for meaning, and the remarkable flexibility of the human mind in its quest to make sense of the senseless. The gloom that had settled over the land was not just a physical darkness, it was a psychological one. And the villagers, with their prayers, their charms, and their whispered accusations, were simply trying to find a light, however faint, to guide them through it. The initial impact on agriculture, a silent, chilling stillness, the agricultural landscape, once a vibrant testament to human labor and nature's bounty, transformed into a canvas of quiet despair under the persistent blue light. The fields, which should have been alive with the rustle of growing crops and the hum of insects, now lay in an eerie stillness, a silence that spoke volumes of the unfolding catastrophe. This was not the sudden, dramatic destruction of a storm, but a slow, insidious decay, a gradual fading of life that mirrored the dimming of the sun itself.